Hey there, and welcome. So glad you could make it. Go on, make yourself comfortable, because we're about to dive into something really chilling. If you're curious about the dark corners of history, those forgotten Halloweens, then you're definitely in the right place. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep exploring these stories with me. Tell me, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now let's go way back. The year is 1347. You wake up in the middle of a medieval winter, and the first thing you feel isn't just cold. It's a biting, all-encompassing damp cold that sinks deep into your bones. It's the kind of cold that feels ancient, like it's been waiting for you, clinging to everything. Your breath, a ragged puff of mist, hangs heavy in the air, then vanishes as quickly as it appears. You lie there for a moment, listening. The wind outside howls, a mournful, hungry sound that rattles the thin, wooden shutters of your small cottage. The smell is thick, a heavy mix of stale straw, wood smoke that never quite leaves, and something else, a damp earthiness, a hint of something unwashed that permeates the very fabric of your rough wool blanket. You pull it tighter, but it does little to ward off the chill. Your fingers, already numb, brush against the coarse material, feeling the scratchy weave. You try to shift, to find a warmer spot, but every inch of the crude bed seems equally unforgiving. The straw beneath you rustles loudly, a dry, brittle sound in the profound darkness. Darkness. It's absolute, not a pinprick of light anywhere. You instinctively reach out, your hand sweeping through the empty air, searching for the familiar wall beside you. It's cold and rough against your palm. You push yourself up slowly, your muscles protesting, stiff from the cold and the hard sleeping surface. A faint creak of the floorboards under your weight is the only sound you make. You can hear faint snores from another part of the room, a reminder that you're not entirely alone in this frigid space. The wind picks up again, this time sounding closer, as if it's trying to force its way through the very walls. You hear a distinct rhythmic drip, 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 water finding its way through a crack in the thatched roof, landing with a soft, steady plunk somewhere nearby. You imagine the small puddle forming on the packed earth floor, slowly expanding in the unseen gloom. It's a constant, small reminder of the world's relentless indifference. You shiver, pulling your knees closer to your chest, trying to generate some warmth. You rub your hands together, the friction doing little more than stirring the cold air between your palms. The hunger pangs start to gnaw, a dull ache in your stomach, a familiar companion in these early, unlit hours. You press your lips together, a silent resolve forming. There's no point in lingering here in the cold and dark. You swing your legs over the side of the bed, feeling the sudden, shocking chill of the packed earth beneath your bare feet. Each step you take is a small, deliberate act against the suffocating cold. It's a strange thing, this constant battle with the elements. You realize how much of your day, of your very existence, is just an ongoing negotiation with the world around you. The cold, the hunger, the relentless dark. And you wonder, for a fleeting moment, if anyone else in this wide, unlit world feels this same stark, isolating chill. A different kind of chill hits you now, as you pull back the rough animal hide serving as a door covering. It's the raw, outdoor cold, carrying the sharp, clean scent of frost-nipped earth and stagnant water from a nearby ditch. The wood of the doorframe feels like splintered ice against your fingertips. You step outside, into the profound absence of light, and your breath catches. It's not just dark inside your cottage. Out here, the night swallows everything. Your eyes strain, trying to pierce the gloom, but it's like staring into an inkwell. There's no moon, no stars visible through the heavy, low-hanging clouds. You know the outline of the small, familiar path to the privy, just beyond the edge of the cottage, but tonight it feels utterly alien, swallowed whole by the oppressive black. You reach out, your hand brushing against the rough timber wall of your home, using it as a guide, feeling your way, each step deliberate and cautious on the uneven ground. The wind has died down, leaving an unsettling stillness. This quiet is more unnerving than the howl. It's the quiet of something holding its breath, waiting. Every tiny sound feels amplified. The soft crunch of frozen grass under your rough boot, the distant, mournful hoot of an owl, a sudden rustle in the unseen bushes nearby that makes your heart leap into your throat. Was it just a small creature, disturbed by your presence, or something larger, something watching? You tell yourself it's only the wind, or a field mouse, but your mind is already conjuring shapes from the shifting shadows that aren't even there. This is when the old stories creep in, the ones whispered by firelight. Tales of things that hunt when the sun dies, spirits that wander the earth, beasts with eyes that glow in the deep, unwavering dark. You feel terribly exposed, vulnerable. Your skin prickles, not just from the cold, but from the chilling sensation of being observed by unseen eyes. You quicken your pace, an urgency pushing you forward, wanting to complete your task and retreat to the relative safety of your four walls. You hurry back, your senses on high alert, your ears straining for any sound that isn't your own ragged breathing. The return journey feels longer, the darkness denser, the potential threats more numerous. Finally, your hand finds the familiar latch, and you push the hide back into place, sealing yourself inside again. The air within, though stale and cold, feels like a sudden embrace, a fragile shield against the vast, terrifying unknown outside. You stand there for a moment, leaning against the door, your heart still thudding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. It's amazing how a simple absence of light can transform the world, stripping away familiarity and replacing it with raw, primordial fear. The sun doesn't just bring warmth, it brings certainty, and when it dies, every creak, every shadow, every fleeting sound becomes a monster in the mind. You're back inside your small, drafty cottage, trying to push away the lingering chill of the deep night. You settle back onto your rough straw mattress, the rustling, a small comfort in the dark, but sleep feels miles away. Your mind is still replaying the shadows that weren't there, the sounds that might have been. Then, it happens. A sudden, sharp yelp pierces the night, raw and terrified, from somewhere out in the distance. It's not just a cry. It's a high-pitched, desperate shriek, cut abruptly short as if a hand had clamped down over a mouth. It's followed by a choked, frantic squawk, a struggling sound. Then, silence. A silence that feels heavier, more menacing than before, pressing in on you from all sides. Your body tenses instantly, every muscle rigid, frozen in place. Your breath catches in your throat, held captive, a painful knot in your chest. You lie perfectly still, straining your ears, trying to decipher what you just heard, dissecting every echo in the profound darkness. Was it an animal? A fox, perhaps? Caught by a larger predator? Or something else? The cold sweat that had receded now returns, prickling your skin, even beneath the coarse blanket. Your heart begins to thump a frantic, uneven rhythm against your ribs, a wild drumbeat of rising alarm that feels impossibly loud in the otherwise dead quiet. Then, another sound begins, closer this time, almost vibrating through the earth itself. A low, guttural growl, deep in the chest, unlike any wild dog or wolf you've ever heard. It's too steady, too deliberate, carrying an unnatural depth that hints at something larger, more ancient, something that hunts with cold intent. It seems to hang in the air, a threat without a form. It fades slowly, only to be replaced by a faint, rhythmic scratching, like claws dragging against raw wood or perhaps stone nearby. It's an irregular sound, pausing, then resuming, moving with an unsettling purpose, as if searching or patrolling, getting closer to the cluster of cottages where you sleep. You picture it, unseen but felt, circling your small world. The other people in the room stir. You hear a soft, sharp intake of breath from across the space. Then the quiet creak of someone else sitting upright on their own mattress. A shared fear now palpable, thick in the air, even without a single spoken word. Their stillness mirrors your own, their fear a heavy cloak you all share. You press your ear against the damp, cold-packed earth floor, hoping to discern the exact direction, the terrifying proximity of these sounds. The silence between each distinct noise feels stretched, almost unbearable, filling with your own frantic thoughts and desperate prayers. The scratching stops, abruptly, leaving a void of sound that is immediately filled by a new, utterly chilling noise, a slow, deliberate dragging, heavy and persistent, like something substantial being pulled over frozen ground. It's methodical, tireless, uneven in its rhythm, suggesting a great weight or an awkward burden. You can practically feel the resistance of the earth, the friction of whatever is being hauled. Your imagination, fueled by the oppressive darkness and the raw terror of the unseen, paints vivid, horrifying pictures of what could be causing such a sound. You squeeze your eyes shut, as if that might stop the noise, might make it disappear, but it only intensifies the internal symphony of dread, allowing your mind to conjure even worse horrors. This escalating soundscape isn't just noise. It's a terrifying narrative being woven in the dark, each unsettling element contributing to a horrifying tale of what truly lurks beyond the thin walls of your home, just outside the radius of what you call safety. The simple absence of light outside has truly become a stage for true, raw medieval terror, a canvas for the unseen. The dragging sound outside your cottage finally ceases, plunging the world back into a terrifying, absolute silence. You are left suspended in the void, your heart hammering against your ribs, anticipating another horrifying sound, another sign of what stalks the night. This stillness is almost worse than the noise, an empty stage where your imagination, now running wild, paints the darkest scenarios. You hear a sharp, involuntary gasp from a child across the room, a tiny, almost inaudible sound that speaks volumes of the shared dread, a small, fragile life utterly vulnerable to the unseen terrors lurking just beyond the thin walls. You feel a prickle of goosebumps spread across your skin, despite the desperate attempt to burrow deeper into your coarse blanket, seeking any phantom warmth. Then, it hits you. A new smell. It's not the familiar scent of damp earth or stale wood smoke, but something far more visceral, far more alarming. A coppery metallic tang cuts sharply through the heavy, stale air of your small hut. The unmistakable, brutal aroma of fresh blood. It's faint at first, carried on the faintest draft through a crack in the wattle and daub wall, but it grows stronger, asserting its dreadful presence with each shallow breath you take. You taste it on your tongue, a phantom metallic bitterness that makes your stomach clench, a wave of nausea threatening to rise. This isn't just a wild animal's kill. This smell carries an undeniable edge of savage intent, a primal violence that sends a jolt of ice through your veins, lodging itself deep in your gut. You try to swallow, but your throat feels dry and constricted, suddenly too tight. Your eyes, utterly useless in the pervasive darkness, dart around as if they could somehow pierce the blackness and reveal the precise source of this horrifying scent. You can almost feel the presence of whatever left this mark, its phantom breath on your cheek, its silent scrutiny. The air itself feels colder now, heavier, charged with the brutal energy of a recent, violent struggle. A faint quiver runs through your hands, which you quickly clench into fists, digging your nails into your palms, a small, self-inflicted pain to ground yourself against the overwhelming, suffocating fear. Every nerve ending feels electrified, hyper-aware. Someone else in the room shivers violently, a sudden, sharp tremor that makes their straw mattress rustle loudly, an undeniable echo of the fear gripping everyone in the dark space. You imagine their wide, terrified eyes, just like yours, staring into the profound nothingness, each of you privately confronting the same dreadful reality, separated only by a few feet and the illusion of safety. The coppery scent seems to cling to the very air, a lingering ghost of violence that refuses to dissipate, seeping deeper into the rough fabric of your clothes, into your very being. You picture the victim, the hunted, lost forever in the deep darkness, and the hunter, lurking just beyond your sight, now stained with the chilling evidence of its kill, perhaps even still out there, nearby. The terror isn't just from the sounds anymore. It's from this tangible, horrifying proof that something truly monstrous has been at work, not far from where you lie. The reality of the distant yelp, the guttural growling, the rhythmic scratching, the heavy dragging. All these sensory fragments now coalesce into one undeniable, horrifying truth. You understand, with a chilling clarity that drains the blood from your face, that the world outside these flimsy walls is a place of raw, brutal predation. It's a place where life can be extinguished in an instant, and all that's left are the telltale echoes, like this dreadful smell, stark, chilling reminders of the endless, unforgiving hunt that defines existence for both the prey and the predator in this relentless, unlit world. You finally drifted into a fitful, shallow sleep, the fear from the night's hunt still clinging to your mind like cobwebs. But then, an insidious smell seeps into your consciousness, pulling you back from the edge of slumber. It's thick, cloying, and utterly repulsive. Not the sharp, metallic tang of blood from earlier, but something far more pervasive. A scent that seems to have sunk its roots into the very air. It's a sickly sweet odor, like overripe fruit that's gone completely rotten, mixed with something indescribably foul and damp. A deep, earthy decay that smells vaguely familiar yet horrifyingly new. It coats the back of your throat, making you gag, even before you're fully awake. You push yourself up, coughing, trying to clear the dreadful taste from your mouth. But it lingers, a sour coating on your tongue. The smell is stronger now, saturating every corner of your small cottage, making the stale air feel heavy and toxic. It feels like a physical presence, pushing against your senses, settling deep in your chest. You wrinkle your nose, instinctively trying to block it out, but it's futile. It's everywhere. It clings to the rough wool of your blanket, to the straw beneath you, to the very timbers of the walls. It's the smell of something dying, or something already dead, but in a way that's slow, agonizing, and sickeningly sweet. You glance around the dark room, though your eyes still struggle to adjust. You can feel the uneasy stirrings of the others. A quiet groan escapes from one of the other sleeping forms, followed by a series of shallow, troubled coughs. You can tell they're also awake now, battling this unseen assailant that invades your sanctuary. You hear the rustle of straw as someone shifts restlessly, clearly trying to escape the pervasive odor, though there's nowhere to go. There's a quiet despair in their movements, a shared understanding that this isn't just a temporary stench from a nearby pit. This is something deeper, something that has settled over your small community like a shroud. You try to take a deep breath, to clear your head, but the air is too heavy with it. Each inhale feels like you're drawing in decay itself, poisoning your lungs, tainting your very essence. A dull ache begins behind your eyes, a pressure building, as if the smell is pressing directly on your brain. It feels like the world outside has been steeped in this dreadful aroma, and now it's seeping in through every crack and crevice, unstoppable, inescapable. It's the smell of bodies, you realize with a jolt of cold dread, not just one, but perhaps many, or something deeply, fundamentally unwell. The silence that had followed the night's earlier terrors now feels different, less about a hunter, and more about a widespread, creeping horror. This smell speaks of a different kind of monster, one that doesn't roar or stalk, but slowly, relentlessly, steals life, leaving behind only this ghastly evidence. You can't see it, but you can feel its presence, permeating everything. You pull your blanket up higher, not for warmth, but as if it could somehow filter out the pervasive, sickening odor, a futile gesture against a force that feels utterly overwhelming. This isn't just a bad smell, it's a premonition, a dark whisper of mortality carried on the invisible currents of the morning air. You realize with a chilling certainty that this is the smell of a changing world, a world where the lines between life and death are blurring, and where the presence of the grave has become as tangible as the air you breathe. It's a haunting reminder of how fragile life truly is, and how easily it can be claimed, not by teeth and claws, but by something far more insidious, something that leaves this sickening, unforgettable aroma as its calling card. The gray light of morning, thin and weak, finally begins to seep through the small, grimy opening high on the wall, but it does little to dispel the pervasive, sickening sweetness that still chokes the air. If anything, the faint visibility only makes it worse, as if the light itself is tainted, revealing the invisible particles of decay that now seem to hang heavy and still, suspended in the chill air. You open your eyes, but the smell immediately asserts its unwelcome presence, assaulting your senses, making your stomach lurch before you even try to move. It clings to your nostrils, a constant cloying reminder of the night's dreadful revelations. You push yourself up slowly, the rough wool of your tunic feeling strangely heavy, saturated with the foul odor. Your throat still feels raw, your mouth dry and bitter. You look at the others, in the small, cramped space. Their faces, usually creased with the worry of daily toil, are now pale and drawn, etched with a new kind of weariness that goes beyond physical exhaustion. A woman across from you, usually robust, sits huddled, her head in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent, dry retching. A small child, usually chattering, sits perfectly still, staring blankly ahead, a single, clear tear tracing a path down his grubby cheek. No one speaks. The shared silence is thick with unspoken fear, the unasked question hanging heavy. What is this, and will it ever truly leave? You slowly get to your feet, feeling unsteady, as if the air itself is weighing you down. The cold, packed earth under your feet feels damp, somehow infected by the pervasive scent. You try to take a step, to move towards the entrance, but each movement feels sluggish, a monumental effort against an invisible current. The smell seems to cling to you, to become a part of you, as if you've been marinated in it overnight. You try to swallow, but it's like trying to swallow nothing but this suffocating aroma, leaving you parched and nauseous. A low, hacking cough echoes from outside, followed by another, closer this time, then a series of weaker, more desperate coughs. The sounds are muffled by the thin walls, but their meaning is terrifyingly clear. It's not just in your cottage. It's everywhere. It's a phantom presence, an unseen killer that permeates the very air your village breathes. You watch as a man near the door hesitantly reaches for the animal hide covering, his hand trembling, his eyes wide with a mixture of dread and morbid curiosity. He pulls it back just enough to peek out, and for a fleeting moment, a sliver of gray, mournful light and a sharper, more intense wave of the sickening stench rushes in. He recoils almost instantly, his face a mask of profound horror, then quickly drops the hide back into place, sealing you all once more within the suffocating confines of your shared dread. You stand there, motionless, the image of his terrified eyes burned into your mind. The air inside your small home, though still foul, feels marginally less intense than the sudden blast from outside. You lean against the cold, rough wall, feeling its solidity, its temporary protection. You realize that this isn't just a smell. It's a constant, tormenting presence, a ghost of every last breath taken, every life lost, every bit of vitality slowly draining from the world. It's an invisible enemy that demands a quiet, desperate endurance, forcing you to simply live, day by day, breath by agonizing breath, under its relentless, nauseating shadow. The thin, gray morning light struggles to push back the encroaching shadows, but it does nothing to clear the persistent, cloying scent of mortality that still hangs heavy in the air around your small village. You're out of your cottage, trying to fetch water from the communal well, each step feeling weighted by the oppressive atmosphere. The bucket, rough against your numb fingers, clanks softly as you try to lower it. But as you turn back, a shadow falls over you, distinct and sharp, cutting through the dim light in a way that feels almost unnatural. You freeze, the bucket still half submerged. Your eyes, accustomed to the gloom, struggle to focus on the figure standing just a few paces away. It's a man, but not one you recognize from your village. He's tall, his shoulders broad under a worn, dark cloak that seems to absorb what little light there is. His face is obscured by a deep hood, but you can feel his gaze, an intense, unsettling weight that presses down on you. His posture isn't casual, it's a coiled readiness, like a predator observing its prey. The air around him feels colder, somehow, as if even the lingering stench of decay shies away from his presence. He doesn't speak, doesn't move, but the message is clear. He stands between you and the path back to your cottage, a silent, unmoving barrier. Your throat feels dry, parched not just from thirst, but from a sudden, sharp surge of fear. You notice the rough, scarred leather of a gauntlet peeking from beneath his sleeve and a glint of metal at his hip. Not a farmer's tool, but something more purposeful, more dangerous. Your heart thumps a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a desperate drumbeat against the unsettling silence he maintains. You instinctively tighten your grip on the rope of the bucket, a useless defense, a small, futile act of defiance. Out of the corner of your eye, you see other villagers. Their usual morning routines are halted. They stand frozen, watching, their faces pale and etched with a fear that mirrors your own, but also with a kind of resigned understanding. They don't approach, they don't call out, they avert their eyes as if looking too long might draw the outlaw's attention. A woman pulls her child closer, her hand clamped over the child's mouth, stifling even a whimper. Their silence speaks volumes, a shared code of quiet submission, of avoiding the eye of danger. You feel utterly alone, singled out by this menacing presence. The man takes a slow step closer, then another, the sound of his heavy boots crunching on the frozen earth remarkably loud in the oppressive quiet. You can hear your own ragged breathing, suddenly too loud. He stops directly in front of you, and for a fleeting moment, you catch a glimpse of deep-set eyes beneath the hood, shadowed and cold, utterly devoid of warmth or recognition. It's a gaze that chills you more than any winter wind, a pure, unyielding assessment, like you're little more than an obstacle, or perhaps an opportunity. His hand, slow and deliberate, reaches out, not for you, but for the bucket, and with a swift, strong pull he takes it from your grasp. He turns then, without a word, and walks away with your water, his silent, powerful stride carrying him quickly into the lingering morning mist, dissolving into the hazy gray. You stand there, numb, your hands still outstretched in the empty space where the bucket had been, feeling the chill of its absence. The cold realization hits you. This isn't the fear of an unseen monster or a creeping sickness. This is the stark, brutal reality of human power, human will, and human desperation. This is the cold shadow of an outlaw, a tangible, immediate threat that leaves you not just afraid, but utterly helpless, acutely aware of your own smallness, in a world where strength can take anything it desires. You're trudging through the village square, the pervasive stench of mortality still a dull ache in your nostrils, but it's now mixed with a new, sharp tang in the air, fear, and the metallic scent of stale blood. Your eyes are drawn upwards, past the usual clutter of huts and stalls, to the center of the square. There, stark against the gray, unforgiving sky, stands the gallows. It's always been there, a grim fixture, but today it feels different, more prominent, like a dark skeletal finger pointing at the heavens. You slow your pace, your breath catching in your throat. The crowd gathered around it is unusually quiet, a hushed murmur replacing the usual morning chatter. Their faces are a mixture of grim fascination and palpable dread, their eyes wide, reflecting the somber scene. You see a child clinging to his mother's skirt, burying his face, but his small hands are spread, peeking through his fingers. An old man, his back bent with age, simply shakes his head slowly, a deep sigh escaping his lips. They are all witnesses, bound by this grim spectacle. As you draw closer, the details sharpen with chilling clarity. A body hangs from the noose, swaying ever so slightly in the biting wind. It's not someone you recognize, but the sight alone sends a jolt through you, a visceral punch to the gut. The rough rope is thick, stark against the pale, lifeless skin of the neck. You notice the coarse fabric of the tattered clothes, the bare, frost-nipped feet dangling just above the frozen earth. A flock of crows circles high above, their raucous caws the only truly loud sound in the morbid stillness. A fitting, unsettling soundtrack to the scene. You avert your eyes, but the image is burned into your mind. You feel a wave of cold nausea wash over you, a desperate urge to turn and flee, to escape this stark display of human cruelty, this raw administration of medieval justice. But a strange, morbid curiosity, a primal instinct to understand the terror, holds you rooted to the spot. You can't look away completely. You glance back, taking in the rigid posture, the finality of it all. It's a chilling tableau, a grim lesson for all to see. The air itself feels heavy, charged with the lingering presence of violence, of a life abruptly ended. You can almost feel the tremor of that last, desperate struggle, the shudder of final breath. The silence of the crowd, is a powerful testament to the impact, a collective intake of fear, a silent prayer that they will never find themselves in such a position. The smell of fear, a sharp, acrid scent, now mingles with the ever-present decay, creating an almost unbearable cocktail of dread. This is the harsh face of medieval justice. Not a court, not a trial, but a public, brutal declaration, a stark warning etched into the very landscape of your village. You realize that in this unforgiving world, justice isn't a complex ideal, but a visible, terrifying act, a final judgment passed at the end of a rope, reminding everyone of the thin, precarious line between life and death, innocence and guilt, freedom and oblivion. It's a truth hammered home with every gust of wind that makes the body sway, a horrifying lesson in compliance and survival. You're trying to find a small measure of peace in the dim light of late morning, your hands busy with the familiar task of mending a tear in your rough tunic. The coarse fabric feels dry and scratchy against your calloused fingers as you push the bone needle through, a small, repetitive action that usually brings a fragile sense of order. The pervasive, sickly sweet scent of decay still hangs in the air, a constant unwelcome guest, but for a moment you try to ignore it, focusing on the thread. Then, a new sound cuts through the heavy atmosphere. It starts softly, a low murmur of voices from just beyond the thin wattle and daub wall of your cottage. At first, it's indistinct, just the hum of human presence, but then it sharpens, becoming deliberate, hushed whispers. They're too quiet to fully grasp the words, but the tone itself is unmistakable, furtive, urgent, laced with an unsettling undercurrent of fear and secrecy. You pause, needle held mid-stitch, your head cocked, straining your ears. The blood in your veins feels colder, not from the biting winter, but from the sudden, sharp prickle of unease that shoots through you. These aren't casual greetings. This is something shared in hushed tones, something hidden. You glance around your shared living space. Other villagers have also stopped their tasks. A woman across the room, who was kneading a small lump of dough, now stands rigid, her hands frozen on the crude table, her eyes wide and fixed on the wall where the whispers emanate. A man who is sharpening a tool slowly lowers it, the rasping sound abruptly ceasing, his jaw tight. Children, sensing the shift in adult demeanor, quieten, their small faces mirroring the adults' apprehension. Their gazes meet yours, a silent communication of shared curiosity and growing dread, wondering if you too can hear it, if you understand what it means. No one dares to speak aloud, as if the very act of a normal voice might draw unwelcome attention. The whispers continue, ebbing and flowing, sometimes rising to an agitated hiss, then immediately dropping back into an almost inaudible murmur. You catch glimpses of shadows shifting outside the tiny window opening, figures moving quickly, not lingering, their movements furtive, almost furtive, as if they fear being seen speaking to one another. The very air seems to thicken with unspoken anxieties, with rumors spun out of fear. You try to lean closer to the wall, pressing your ear against the cold, uneven surface, hoping to snatch a single coherent word, a clue, anything to make sense of the unsettling exchange. But all you get is the indistinct resonance, the unsettling rhythm of hidden knowledge. This is a different kind of fear, you realize. Not the terror of the unseen beast, or the raw power of the outlaw, or even the creeping dread of the plague's stench. This is the fear that gnaws from within your own community. The unsettling suspicion that neighbors are keeping secrets, that vital information is being withheld, whispered behind closed doors and thin walls. It's the fear of what people know, what they choose not to say, and how quickly trust can erode when silence becomes a weapon, and whispers carry more weight than shouts. It leaves you feeling isolated, even amidst others, acutely aware of the invisible walls of rumor and paranoia that can rise faster and colder than any winter chill. The whispers from outside your dwelling eventually fade, leaving a heavy quiet in their wake, but the air inside still hums with an unnerving tension. You're trying to ignore the persistent, sickly sweet stench of decay, trying to find some solace in the dim light. Then, a sudden, frantic scuttling erupts from a dark corner, making you jump, your heart leaping into your throat. It's a quick, dry scratching, followed by a series of tiny, desperate squeaks, just beneath the worn floorboards. Then, a distinct, light patter as something darts across the packed earth. The sound isn't new. You've always had mice, especially in winter, but tonight it carries a new, unsettling weight, a chilling implication that makes the hair on your arms stand on end. You spot it then, a small, dark shadow, quick as thought, vanishing into the cracks of the wall near the hearth. Your eyes dart instinctively to the others in the dwelling. Their faces, already pale from cold and fear, are now etched with a different kind of dread. You see a woman, usually calm, cross herself swiftly, her eyes wide with a superstitious terror, not disgust. Her gaze flickers, not at the wall where the mouse disappeared, but subtly, pointedly, towards an old woman huddled silently in the darkest corner, whose eyes, usually clouded by age, now hold a flicker of defiant resentment. The air thickens with unspoken accusations, with a cold, almost tangible suspicion that feels heavier than the foul smell. The small, common mouse is no longer just a pest. In the grip of fear and the lingering rumors, it has become something else entirely. You remember the hushed stories, the terrifying whispers that have been circulating for days, tales of the devil's familiars, of small, scurrying creatures sent by witches to spy, to spread ill will, to carry sickness. Suddenly, the sight of the mouse isn't just an annoyance. It's an omen, a direct link to the invisible evils that plague your world, and worse, a perceived link to one of your own. Your stomach clenches, a knot of icy dread forming deep in your gut, as you feel the unspoken shift in the room, the sudden hardening of gazes, the chilling distance growing between people. You watch as a young man, slowly, deliberately, picks up a heavy wooden club, his knuckles white, his jaw tight. His eyes, usually friendly, are now narrowed, full of a cold, righteous anger. He moves with a quiet intensity towards the wall where the mouse vanished, not with the casual irritation of pest control, but with the grim determination of someone hunting a far more insidious enemy. He strikes the wall, once, twice, a dull, resonant thud that vibrates through the entire dwelling, but the mouse, if it was there, is long gone. The sound of his blows is less about killing a rodent, and more about expressing a desperate, burgeoning rage against an invisible, indefinable threat that has somehow found a face, a human face, in the fear-addled minds of your neighbors. A collective sigh of nervous relief, mixed with palpable tension, ripples through the room, but the fear hasn't dissipated. It has simply changed its target. The air crackles with an undercurrent of barely suppressed hostility. You feel a new kind of cold now, not from the winter wind, but from the chilling knowledge that the whispers have taken root, that suspicion has become tangible, and that the greatest threat might not be the unseen monster outside or the creeping plague, but the way fear can twist the minds of people, turning them against each other, making them see the devil's work in the most innocent of creatures, and in turn, in the most vulnerable of their own kind. It's a brutal reminder of how easily terror can unravel the fragile threads of community, leaving everyone isolated in a shared, suffocating paranoia. You're out, desperate, trying to find anything that might ward off the gnawing hunger, your eyes scanning the sparse, frozen undergrowth at the edge of the forbidden woods. The air is sharp and clean here, a biting scent of pine needles, damp earth, and the crisp cold that usually makes your nose run. But then, a new smell hits you, abruptly cutting through the natural forest aromas. It's warm, rich, and undeniably metallic, far more potent than the stale decay of the village. It's the raw, visceral scent of fresh, hot blood, thick and unmistakable. Your stomach clenches, a mix of revulsion and a sudden, primal surge of alarm. You follow the scent instinctively, cautiously, your heart starting to beat a little faster against your ribs. The frozen twigs snap under your worn boots, each sound startlingly loud in the quiet forest. You push aside a low-hanging branch, heavy with frost, and there it is. A large deer, a magnificent stag, lies half-butchered on the forest floor, its dark, glistening entrails spilled onto the white-dusted earth. The steam still rises faintly from the fresh kill, a stark contrast to the biting cold surrounding it. You see the deep, vivid crimson staining the snow. A brutal splash of life spilled out, stark and undeniable. You feel a gasp catch in your throat, a sharp intake of the frigid, blood-scented air. This isn't just any deer. This is a king's deer, marked by its size, its untamed nobility. This is a severe transgression, a direct challenge to the harsh forest laws. Your eyes dart around frantically, searching the immediate area. You spot crude, hasty cuts in the carcass, a sign of desperate speed rather than practiced skill. There are fresh footprints in the thin layer of snow, large and heavy, leading deeper into the woods, and a crude, bloodied flint knife left carelessly nearby, glinting dully in the weak light. A cold sweat breaks out on your brow, despite the winter chill. Other villagers, also scavenging the fringes of the wood, begin to stumble upon the gruesome scene. Their movements slow, their faces draining of color as their eyes land on the fallen beast. A woman clutches her hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with a horrifying mix of understanding and fear. A man, usually boisterous, falls silent, his jaw slack, his gaze shifting nervously from the deer to the distant path, as if expecting the king's men to appear at any moment. They exchange quick, frightened glances, a silent, shared comprehension of the immense danger this act represents to all of them, the innocent and the guilty alike. No one dares to touch the carcass, to even step too close. It's a poisoned gift, a desperate act of defiance that could bring swift, brutal retribution upon the entire village. You stand there, a knot of icy dread tightening in your chest. This isn't about hunger alone, though hunger surely drove the hand that did this. This is an act of blatant desperation, a direct challenge to the power that governs your lives, a silent scream of defiance against the crushing weight of the medieval world. You realize that the scent of that fresh, warm blood isn't just from the deer. It's the smell of danger, of rebellion, and the terrifying, relentless pursuit of survival, even when it means risking everything against the king's iron fist. And you know with a chilling certainty that this act will not go unpunished, and its shadow will fall over everyone. The lingering, metallic tang of the poached deer's blood still hangs heavy in the frozen forest air, a grim accusation that feels too loud, too visible. You're trying to process the brutal scene, the sheer desperation that would drive someone to such a perilous act, when a new sound tears through the stillness. It's a distant rhythmic thudding growing steadily louder, accompanied by a faint, metallic jingle. Hooves on frozen earth. And not just one or two. A group. Your heart leaps into your throat, a sudden, icy dread gripping you far colder than the winter wind. You instinctively press yourself back against the rough bark of a pine tree, trying to merge with the shadows. Your eyes dart around the small clearing where the deer lies. The other villagers, scattered in their desperate scavenging, have also heard it. Some freeze mid-step, their eyes wide with shared panic, while others try to melt into the sparse undergrowth, their movements swift and desperate, like cornered animals. The very air seems to thicken, charged with a frantic, silent urgency. The thudding grows louder, the jingle of metal more distinct, the heavy, measured approach of men on horseback. These are not villagers. These are the king's men. Suddenly, a group of riders bursts into the clearing, their horses snorting plumes of frosty breath into the air. They are clad in heavy, dark tunics, some with glinting metal breastplates, and their boots are thick and muddy. Long spears rise above them, their tips sharp and menacing. At their head rides a formidable man, his face grim and weathered, his gaze like flint. He surveys the scene, the bloody carcass, the scattered, terrified villagers, with an unwavering, cold authority. His eyes, devoid of any warmth, sweep over each of you, a silent, damning accusation. You feel the weight of his stare, heavy and inescapable, making your bones feel hollow. He dismounts with a heavy thud, his boots crunching on the frozen ground. He doesn't speak, but his presence fills the clearing, radiating an intimidating power. He points a gloved finger, clad in thick leather, first at the deer, then sweeps it across the faces of the villagers, a silent demand for answers, for the culprit. No one moves. No one dares to meet his gaze. You see a woman pull her shawl tighter around her head, shrinking, her shoulders hunched in silent terror. A young man stares fixedly at the ground, his jaw tight, his hands clenched into fists, the muscle in his cheek twitching uncontrollably. The air fills with the smell of horse sweat, damp leather, and the stark, acrid scent of their fear. The leader walks slowly around the carcass, his eyes missing nothing. He nudges the bloodied flint knife with his boot, then looks back at your faces. His gaze lingers for a moment on the old woman who had earlier been the target of suspicion, a faint flicker of interest in his cold eyes, then moves on. His men fan out, their movements deliberate, intimidating, pushing aside bushes, poking at the snow with their spear tips, searching for any sign, any indication of who committed this grave offense against royal decree. Their presence alone feels like a physical assault, a brutal reminder of who holds the true power. You stand there, utterly helpless, a knot of pure dread tightening in your stomach. This isn't just about finding a poacher. This is about asserting dominance, demonstrating the king's iron will. This crime, committed out of desperate hunger, is now being treated as an act of rebellion, a direct challenge to the very fabric of their authority. You realize with a chilling clarity that this isn't merely justice being served, it's power being brutally reasserted, and its terrifying shadow will fall not just on the guilty, but on every single one of you. The entire village now stands under the oppressive, unforgiving weight of the king's wrath, all because of a deer and the desperate hunger of a single man. The air, already thick with the lingering stench of decay, is now pierced by a new, utterly alien smell. It's a sickly sweet, pungent aroma, like burnt hair and decaying flowers, tinged with something metallic and acrid, something deeply unnatural. It clings to the cold, damp air, making your nostrils sting, pulling you inexplicably towards its source. You hesitate, your gut churning with a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, but the scent is insistent, drawing you deeper into the pre-dawn gloom, away from the familiar, if terrifying, confines of the village. You pick your way carefully through the frozen undergrowth at the edge of the forgotten woods, your worn boots crunching loudly on brittle twigs, each sound amplified in the profound silence. The acrid smoke thickens as you draw closer, swirling low to the ground, obscuring the ancient gnarled trees. Then you see them. Shapes, not the king's men, not wild beasts, but figures. Hooded, shadowy forms, their backs to you, gathered in a tight, unsettling circle around an ancient, moss-covered stone. A faint, flickering light pulses from their center. Not the warm glow of a hearth, but a sickly, yellowish hue, casting dancing, distorted shadows against the gnarled trunks of the surrounding oaks. The scene feels wrong, profoundly out of place, a tableau painted in dread. The air vibrates with a low, guttural chant, rhythmic and hypnotic, yet utterly devoid of any comforting familiarity. It's a sound that seems to peel back the layers of your soul, exposing something raw and vulnerable, a primal fear you hadn't known you possessed. It rises and falls, a monotonous, unsettling drone that seems to speak of ancient, forgotten things. You catch a quick glimpse of strange symbols daubed in something dark on the rough tree bark, grotesque, twisting shapes that sicken the heart and prickle your skin with a cold dread. They are not the crosses or saints you know. These are symbols of an older, hungrier darkness. You peer through the tangled branches, your breath hitched in your throat. You spot other villagers, or what appear to be villagers. Among the hooded figures, their forms rigid, their faces, though mostly obscured by shadows and hoods, seem etched with a mixture of terror and grim determination. They stand not as participants, but as unwilling witnesses, their stillness a heavy testament to a shared, unspoken coercion. A shiver, not from the cold, runs down your spine as you realize the extent of this unholy gathering, a community twisted to serve a darker purpose. Suddenly, a sharp, bleating cry pierces the air, raw and primal, cutting through the droning chant. It's quickly followed by a sickening, wet thud, a sound that vibrates in your chest, leaving you breathless. The chanting intensifies for a moment, rising in a fevered, frantic crescendo, then abruptly cuts off, leaving an echoing silence that rings in your ears, somehow louder than the noise that preceded it. The sickly sweet, acrid smoke momentarily clears, and you see, dimly, a small, dark shape at the center of the crude stone altar within the circle. Something small and lifeless, positioned with unsettling care. Around it, the hooded figures stand perfectly still, their forms rigid, a horrifying tableau frozen in the pale, eerie light. You feel an overwhelming sense of blasphemy, of something sacred being utterly violated, twisted into a monstrous mockery. This is not the worship you know, the comfort of prayer. This is an ancient, hungry darkness, awakened by desperate hands, a ritual of dread. You realize that some terrors aren't from beasts or sickness, but from the dark corners of the human spirit itself, when faith is corrupted, and desperation breeds a monstrous new kind of devotion, a terrifying, unholy sacrament laid bare under a cold, indifferent sky. The acrid stench of burnt offerings and fresh blood still clings to the air, thicker than any fog as you remain hidden, frozen in place at the edge of the ancient woods. The small, lifeless shape on the moss-covered stone altar is a stark, gruesome silhouette against the first faint hint of pre-dawn light. The silence that follows the abrupt halt of the chanting is unnerving, a heavy blanket that smothers all natural sounds, making your own ragged breathing feel impossibly loud in your ears. Your stomach clenches, not just from the smell, but from the raw, visceral understanding of what you've just witnessed. Then, the hooded figures begin to move. Not in a celebratory or communal way, but with a furtive, almost ashamed urgency. They break from their circle, melting back into the shadows of the gnarled trees. Their movements quick, disquieting. As they pass, you catch glimpses, not of strange cultists, but of hunched shoulders, downcast heads, and quick, darting glances that avoid all eye contact. You realize, with a chilling jolt, that these are not willing participants. There is no zeal in their retreat, only a palpable fear, a shared shame that radiates from their very posture. A woman, her cloak pulled tight around her face, passes close enough for you to discern a faint, almost imperceptible tremor in her hand as she clutches a small, crude wooden charm. As the figures disperse, thinning out into the dark, you catch another glimpse, a face this time, half obscured by shadow and hood, but unmistakably familiar. It's the baker, his usual jovial face now pale and drawn, his eyes wide with a terror that goes beyond mere superstition. Then another, a young man from the neighboring farm, his jaw set, his gaze fixed on the ground, as if trying to erase the last few moments from his memory. Your blood runs cold. This isn't just a ritual by an unknown force. This is your own community, or a part of it, coerced into something monstrous, something beyond their control. They are both perpetrators and victims, their fear a chilling testament to the power that binds them. You see a solitary figure remaining by the altar, taller, his posture radiating an undeniable authority. He's not hooded in the same way, but his features are still indistinct in the gloom. He watches the others flee, a subtle, almost imperceptible nod of satisfaction in his demeanor. He doesn't speak, but his presence is a silent command, a looming threat that binds these terrified villagers to their unholy secrets. You realize with a heavy heart that the true horror here isn't just the ritual itself, but the chilling, deliberate manipulation of fear. The way it can twist good people into complicity, making them betray their own humanity. The air remains heavy with the scent of the sacrifice, but now it's infused with the bitter taste of treachery and the pervasive reek of desperation. You are left alone in the fading darkness, grappling with the profound, devastating realization that the monsters are not just in the shadows or in old tales. They are made of human fear, human weakness, and human cruelty, hiding behind veiled rituals and dark promises. This isn't just about a demonic force, but about the insidious way power can corrupt, and how a sacred act can be twisted into a terrifying tool of control, making neighbors complicit in horrors against their will, leaving a chilling legacy of mistrust and silent terror in its wake. The air in the communal hall hangs heavy, thick, with the smell of damp straw, unwashed bodies, and an acrid undercurrent of burning resentment. You're crammed shoulder to shoulder with the other villagers, pressed together in the dim, smoky light, filtering through the small opening in the thatched roof. The silence is profound, broken only by the soft shuffling of feet and the ragged, shallow breathing of the nervous crowd. It's a silence that hums with anticipation, with a dark, unspoken energy that makes the small hairs on the back of your neck prickle. You feel a familiar knot of dread tightening in your stomach, a chilling echo of the suspicion that has festered in the village since the whispers began. All eyes, your own included, are fixed on the center of the room, on a crude, three-legged stool. Huddled upon it sits the old woman, her face, usually a map of kindly wrinkles, now a mask of profound fear and bewildered resignation. Her hands, gnarled and trembling, are clasped tightly in her lap. You remember her from the earlier mouse incident, how the collective gaze had subtly shifted towards her. Her eyes, wide and unfocused, seem to stare past all of you, into some private terror. Her thin, gray hair, usually covered, is unbound, straggling around her face, making her look fragile, utterly exposed. A stern-faced man, his voice rough and low, stands before her. You recognize him as the village elder, his usual authority now imbued with a chilling, righteous zeal. He says nothing, but his gaze, hard and unwavering, is a palpable weight pressing down on the old woman. With a slow, deliberate movement, his rough hand reaches out, not gently, and pulls at the collar of her worn tunic, tugging it roughly down from her shoulder. The coarse fabric scrapes against her skin, a small, harsh sound in the suffocating quiet. A collective, sharp intake of breath ripples through the crowd, a sound like dry leaves rustling in a sudden gust of wind. And there it is. On her exposed shoulder, clearly visible in the weak light, is a patch of skin, darker, puckered, almost like an ancient burn, but too distinct in its irregularity. It's a faint, almost subtle mark, not angry or fresh, but undeniably there, a permanent stain on her weathered skin. You lean forward imperceptibly, straining your eyes, trying to discern its exact shape, its texture, anything to make sense of the horrifying accusation. It's an irregular, almost star-shaped discoloration, deeper than a freckle, raised slightly, as if branded from within. You can almost feel the collective condemnation, a wave of cold, righteous anger emanating from the tight-packed villagers. A low murmur, like the distant buzzing of angry bees, begins to rise from the crowd, a mixture of gasps, whispers, and guttural sounds of fear and disgust. You see some villagers recoil, pulling their children closer, their faces contorted in revulsion. Others narrow their eyes, their gazes hardening, confirming what their fear-addled minds had already chosen to believe. There's a dark, venomous satisfaction on some faces, a terrible relief that a tangible source has been found for the unseen horrors plaguing the village. The old woman simply closes her eyes, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek, her body sagging, utterly defeated by the weight of their collective judgment. You stand there, a cold dread washing over you, realizing the terrifying power of belief, especially when steeped in fear. This mark, this simple imperfection on skin, has become something monstrous in the minds of your neighbors, proof of a pact with darkness. It's a chilling reminder of how quickly communal fear can turn inward, twisting the ordinary into the ominous, finding its enemy not in the shadows of the unknown, but in the vulnerable, the different, the easily accused among your own kind. And you know with a heavy heart that once such a mark is seen, once such a fear is ignited, there is no turning back. The dark, star-shaped mark on the old woman's shoulder remains starkly visible in the communal hall's dim light, a silent, damning accusation. The village elder, his face grim, releases her tunic, allowing the coarse fabric to fall back into place, but the damage is done. The mark has been seen, and the judgment, unspoken but palpable, hangs heavy in the smoky air. You feel the collective shift in the crowd, a chilling transformation from uneasy apprehension to a fierce, almost savage conviction. The air itself seems to crackle with their righteous anger, a primal energy that fills the small space. Suddenly, a woman from the back of the crowd pushes forward, her movements swift and agitated. She's younger, her face flushed with a mixture of fear and fury, her eyes blazing with an intense personal hatred. You recognize her as a neighbor, one who had recently lost a child to the creeping sickness, and whose cow had inexplicably gone dry. She points a trembling, accusatory finger at the old woman, her whole body shaking. Though her words are muffled by the dense crowd and the low hum of murmurs, her gestures are painfully clear. She blames the old woman. She accuses her. And in her raw, desperate grief, she demands retribution. The crowd around you responds instantly, a wave of guttural growls and sharp, angry whispers rising from their midst. Their bodies shift, pressing in, a slow, inexorable tide of condemnation. You feel yourself caught in the surge, unable to move, trapped by the sheer press of their bodies and the overwhelming weight of their collective fury. You see a man, his face contorted, raise a clenched fist, his eyes fixed on the old woman with a terrifying, unyielding rage. Another spits on the ground, a crude act of contempt. The communal fear has found its target, its scapegoat, and its collective anger is now unleashed, raw and untamed. The old woman on the stool shrinks further into herself, her eyes wide, with a bewildered terror, no longer simply resigned, but truly desperate. She tries to speak, her lips trembling, a faint, almost inaudible plea escaping her throat, but her voice is drowned out by the rising crescendo of the crowd's fury. Her gaze sweeps over the faces surrounding her, seeking some flicker of understanding, some spark of compassion, but she finds only condemnation, a sea of hostile, unforgiving eyes. Her fragile hope drains away, replaced by a profound, desolate despair that you can almost taste in the bitter air. The elder, who had previously maintained a grim silence, now raises his hand, a gesture for silence that, surprisingly, the crowd obeys, their anger simmering but momentarily held in check. He looks at the old woman, his face impassive, and then back at the enraged crowd. The decision, though unspoken, is clear. The cold dread in your stomach twists into a hard knot. You realize that this isn't just about a mark, or whispers, or even a pest. This is about deep-seated resentments, about a desperate search for answers in a world riddled with unseen horrors, about the brutal human need to assign blame, to find a tangible enemy when none can be seen. You stand there, a helpless witness to the cruel alchemy of fear and envy, watching as the unspoken accusations crystallize into a death sentence. It's a chilling, brutal reminder of how easily a community, gripped by terror and superstition, can turn on its own, sacrificing the innocent to appease its collective dread. You understand, with a stark, terrifying clarity, that in this harsh medieval world, a neighbor's suspicion, fueled by unseen pestilence and personal loss, can be more deadly than any blade, more unforgiving than any judge, twisting a mere birthmark into a damning, irreversible condemnation. The biting cold of the morning air does little to numb the intense heat radiating towards you. It's a dry, scorching heat that prickles your skin and draws the moisture from your eyes, even from where you stand amongst the tightly packed villagers. The air here is thick with wood smoke, a bitter, acrid scent that burns your nostrils, mixing with the ever-present, sickly sweet aroma of decay and the sharper, metallic tang of human fear. You're pushed forward by the slow, inexorable press of bodies, drawn towards the center of the village square, towards the source of this inferno. Before you, a great bonfire crackles and spits, flames leaping and twisting towards the gray sky, sending showers of sparks into the frigid air. The roaring sound of the fire dominates all else, a hungry, living thing. Beside it, two burly men, their faces grim and impassive, tend a smaller, separate fire, fanning it with practiced, deliberate movements. Over this smaller blaze, held by long, black iron tongs, a piece of metal glows. It's a cherry-red, incandescent bar of iron, radiating an almost unbearable heat, shimmering with malevolent intensity. The sight of it sends a fresh wave of nausea through you, a cold dread twisting deep in your gut. The old woman is there, in the center, bound to a rough wooden post, her frail body trembling uncontrollably. Her eyes are wide, unfocused, staring at the glowing iron with a terror so profound it feels like a physical punch to your own chest. Her thin, gray hair, matted and straggling, clings to her pale face, which is etched with a mixture of despair and bewildered agony. She doesn't cry out, doesn't speak, just shivers, her whole being a testament to absolute, paralyzing fear. You see a young woman in the crowd, her face tear-streaked, unable to look directly at the old woman but unable to fully avert her gaze either. She squeezes her child's hand tightly as if to ward off the evil, or perhaps just to find a grounding in this hellish scene. The village elder steps forward, his voice a low, booming pronouncement against the roar of the fire. You can't make out the words over the flames and the thrumming of your own frantic pulse. But his authoritative gestures, his unwavering gaze, speak volumes. He points from the old woman to the glowing iron, then gestures to the heavens, a clear invocation of divine judgment. He believes this fire, this iron, will reveal the truth, will purge the sin. You feel the collective gasp from the crowd, a sharp, ragged inhalation that speaks of shared terror and a grim, almost eager anticipation of the inevitable. Then, one of the burly men, with a sickeningly deliberate slowness, lifts the glowing iron bar from the flames. The air around it shimmers violently. You hear a collective, choked whimper from the crowd as he carries it towards the old woman. Your eyes are fixed on the metal, the blinding intensity of its heat, the dreadful purpose in the man's every step. The silence from the crowd is absolute now, heavy and suffocating, broken only by the crackle of the flames and the frantic hammering of your own heart. This isn't just a spectacle, it's a terrifying sacrament, an unholy communion of human fear and brutal conviction. You stand there, a helpless witness, feeling the raw, ancient terror of a world where divine judgment is wrought by human hands, where faith becomes a weapon, and where the line between justice and barbaric cruelty blurs under the intense heat of both fire and fear. You realize with a chilling clarity that this ordeal is less about revealing a truth and more about performing a terrifying act of purification, a desperate attempt to cleanse a community besieged by unseen horrors, regardless of the brutal cost to an individual life. And the scorching memory of that iron, of that fire, will forever brand itself onto the collective soul of this village. The air shimmers with unbearable heat as the burly man brings the glowing iron towards the old woman. Your eyes are fixated, unable to tear away. A collective, strangled gasp escapes the crowd as the incandescent metal touches her bare skin. A horrifying hiss, like water on a hot stone, pierces the air, accompanied by a sudden, sickening smell of burnt flesh and singed hair. The old woman lets out a primal scream, a sound of pure agony that rips through the village square, tearing at your very soul. Her body convulses, straining against the ropes, then collapses, sagging against the post, utterly spent, her head falling forward. You flinch, a sharp recoil that sends a jolt through your entire body. The raw sound, the smell, the sight of it all, is a brutal assault on your senses. A wave of nausea washes over you, bitter and bile-like in the back of your throat. The crowd around you is no longer a unified mass of angry faces. Many recoil, their own faces now pale with a mixture of horror and revulsion. Some turn away, unable to bear the sight, while others stand frozen, their eyes wide with a terrible fascination, a silent testament to the gruesome spectacle they have just witnessed. A child nearby begins to whimper, burying its face in its mother's cloak. A fragile sound of innocence shattered. The elder stands impassive, his gaze fixed on the old woman's slumped form, a flicker of grim satisfaction in his eyes, as if a great, terrible task has been accomplished. The burly man steps back, the iron still smoking faintly, a chilling testament to its brutal work. On the old woman's skin, where the iron touched, a terrible raw burn blackens and blisters, already weeping, a hideous, festering wound. It's a mark, undeniably, but not of God, you think, but of man's brutal, desperate fear. The air now feels heavier, charged not just with smoke and decay, but with the palpable weight of suffering and unanswered questions. The other villagers slowly begin to stir, their shared silence breaking into a low, uncomfortable murmur. They avoid each other's eyes, a collective guilt, or perhaps just profound shock settling over them. No one rushes to help the old woman, who remains slumped, barely conscious, her shallow, ragged breaths the only sound she makes beyond the crackling of the distant bonfire. The fear of contagion, of association, is too strong, colder than the winter air. She is now an outcast, branded not just by iron, but by the indelible mark of their collective judgment. You stand there, feeling utterly hollowed out, watching the scene unfold, the smoke curling against the gray sky. Is this truly God's judgment, you wonder, or merely man's terrifying brutality, cloaked in sacred justification? The image of the glowing iron, the scream, the mark, it will forever be etched in your memory, a chilling reminder of how easily fear can pervert faith, transforming acts of piety into monstrous cruelty. And the true terror, you realize, is not just the pain inflicted, but the chilling certainty that this collective act, this brutal spectacle, will do nothing to banish the unseen horrors that still plague your village, leaving only a deeper, more festering wound in the heart of the community itself. The raw, acrid smell of burnt flesh from the ordeal still lingers, an unsettling ghost clinging to your clothes and hair, even as you stand in a different, equally somber place. You're at the village graveyard, a small, desolate plot of land behind the rough-hewn chapel, ringed by ancient, skeletal trees. The air here is colder, a damp, earthy chill that bites at your exposed skin, carrying the faint, familiar scent of churned earth and lingering decay. But this decay is different. It's the natural order, the slow return to the soil, not the sickening sweet taint of disease or the brutal char of the stake. Your eyes, red-rimmed from sleepless nights, and the smoke of the morning's horror, scan the rows of crude wooden markers, some tilting precariously, others almost entirely swallowed by the frozen ground. Each marker represents a life, a story, now reduced to a simple, nameless monument. The ground beneath your worn boots is uneven, a patchwork of shallow mounds and dips where graves have settled over time. You feel the cold seeping through the thin leather of your shoes, anchoring you to this desolate place. It's a place of quiet sorrow, a sacred space meant for eternal rest for the honored dead. But today, this sanctity is violated. Ahead of you, a fresh hole has been dug, a jagged, dark rectangle carved into the frozen earth. The soil piled beside it is a raw, dark mound, still showing the marks of the shovel, emitting a faint, metallic odor from the disturbed earth. A coffin, a simple wooden box, lies beside the grave, its lid already nailed shut, crude and unadorned. It's small, too small, and your stomach clenches with a fresh pang of grief and dread. This is the latest victim of the sickness. A child, you realize with a heavy heart, one of the many lives quietly claimed by the unseen plague that still stalks your village. A small group of villagers stands nearby, huddled together against the biting wind, their faces grim and mournful. They are silent, their heads bowed, their shoulders slumped in a shared burden of sorrow. A young mother, her face pale and streaked with tears, leans heavily on a man's arm, her body shaking with silent sobs. A grizzled old man clutches a small, worn wooden cross, his lips moving in a silent prayer, his eyes fixed on the small coffin. Their movements are slow, heavy, each action imbued with a profound sense of loss and helplessness against a relentless, invisible enemy. This isn't just a funeral. It's a silent testament to the plague's unrelenting march, a chilling reminder of how fragile life truly is. You hear the soft, rhythmic scrape of shovels as two gravediggers begin to lower the small coffin into the icy depths of the earth, the ropes creaking under the small weight. The sound is muffled, solemn, each scrape a dull, final thud against the frozen dirt, sealing another life away forever. You watch as a scattering of earth falls onto the wooden lid, a soft, final rain, a gentle farewell to the departed. The sound feels incredibly heavy, a physical weight pressing down on your chest, the finality of it all, a cold, sharp blade. You stand there, witnessing the poignant, desperate ritual, feeling the raw edge of mortality. This is the sanctity of the grave, a final, solemn act of respect for the departed, a desperate hope for peace in a world rife with terror and sorrow. Yet even here, in this sacred place, you realize that the fear of the unseen, the creeping dread of the plague, casts its long, dark shadow. Even in death, there is no true escape from the pervasive horror, only a desperate, silent plea for rest, for an end to the ceaseless, agonizing struggle of existence in a world constantly haunted by forgotten Halloweens and the relentless specter of death. The biting cold of the deepest night has settled over the village graveyard, far colder than the funeral earlier in the day. The air carries the sharp, clean scent of frost, but underneath it a new, unsettling aroma is beginning to churn. The acrid tang of freshly disturbed earth, mingled with something faintly sickly sweet, not quite like the plague's decay, but rather the heavy, cloying scent of long-buried things finally exposed. You're drawn here by a faint, rhythmic scraping sound, a dull, metallic grind that echoes strangely in the oppressive silence, utterly out of place in this sacred resting ground. You creep cautiously between the leaning, skeletal grave markers, your worn boots crunching on the frozen, brittle grass. Each step is deliberate, slow, your breath held tight in your chest, a white cloud puffing out with every shallow exhale. The weak, sickly sliver of a crescent moon offers almost no light, just enough to paint the scene in shades of deepest gray and black. You strain your eyes, trying to pierce the gloom, trying to pinpoint the source of that unsettling sound. Your heart thuds a frantic, uneven rhythm against your ribs, a drumbeat of pure, unadulterated dread. Then you see them. Two figures hunched over a grave, their forms dark and indistinct against the pale, disturbed earth. They are not the solemn mourners of daylight. These movements are furtive, desperate, almost frantic. One wields a shovel, its blade scraping against rock and frozen soil with a sickening regularity, while the other pries frantically at something buried in the earth. You can hear the strained grunt of effort, the sharp crack of splintering wood, a sound that sends a jolt of ice through your very bones. They are desecrating a grave. The very air around them feels polluted, thick with an almost tangible sense of violation. You press yourself behind a particularly large, ancient headstone, the rough, cold stone feeling like a fragile shield against the horror unfolding before you. You watch, horrified, as one of the figures finally levers open a buried coffin, its lid torn away with a sickening wrench. A faint, heavier wave of that cloying, sweet decay washes over you now, stronger, more repulsive, carrying a distinct, dusty undertone of stale linen and bone. The grave robbers reach inside, their arms disappearing into the dark maw of the disturbed earth, their movements quick, almost practiced. They are not seeking gold or jewelry, you realize with a chilling clarity. Their hands emerge, not with glinting metal, but with dark, indistinct shapes, something that looks horrifyingly like a fragment of bone, or perhaps a lock of matted hair clutched tight in their grasping fingers. Your stomach clenches, bile rising in your throat. This isn't hunger or desperation for coin. This is something far darker, a twisted hunger for the remnants of the dead, for relics to fuel some unspeakable purpose. You hear a sharp, stifled sob from nearby, a tiny sound from another hidden villager who has also stumbled upon this unholy scene, their shared horror, a cold, heavy weight in the frigid night. The figures gather their gruesome trophies, their backs still to you, and then, as quickly and silently as they came, they melt back into the deeper shadows of the moonless night, leaving behind only the gaping, defiled grave and the lingering, awful stench of stolen death. You remain hidden, trembling, the cold radiating from the desecrated earth, seeping into your very soul. This isn't just a crime. It's a profound violation, a final, brutal insult to the sanctity of rest. You realize with a chilling certainty that in a world so plagued by fear and sickness, even the solace of the grave is no longer safe. The dead themselves become commodities for dark arts, their final piece ripped away by the desperate, greedy, or truly malevolent hands of the living. The air itself feels different now, heavy with an almost palpable hum, as if the world is holding its breath. It's not just the biting cold that usually cuts through your thin tunic. This is a deeper chill, one that seems to seep into your very soul. A faint, earthy smell, like damp soil freshly turned, mixes strangely with the faint, sweet scent of dried herbs and wood smoke from countless small protective fires. Tonight is the eve of All Hallows, and every sound, every shadow, feels imbued with a sinister significance. A low hum of ancient dread pulsating beneath the surface of your small village. You step outside your cottage, drawn by an uneasy restlessness, and pull your worn shawl tighter around your shoulders. The sky above is a canvas of inky black, utterly devoid of stars, shrouded by heavy, low-hanging clouds that seem to press down on the world. No moon shines through tonight. The usual paths between the cottages, usually busy with evening chores or the shouts of children, are eerily deserted. A profound silence blankets everything, broken only by the distant, mournful hoot of an owl and the soft, almost imperceptible rustle of dry leaves skittering across the frozen ground. Your heart thuds a slow, heavy rhythm in your chest, a silent drumbeat against the unsettling quiet. You notice the changes. Every door, even your own, has fresh markings. Not the crude ash of previous superstitious acts, but intricate, almost desperate symbols etched into the wood with chalk or smeared with a viscous, dark paste. You see small, braided bundles of dried herbs, sprigs of rowan and rosemary, tied with rough twine and hung above thresholds, their faint, bitter scent adding to the strange aroma in the air. These aren't just practical precautions. These are desperate pleas, ancient safeguards against something far older, far more insidious than mere bandits or sickness. The collective fear of the village is almost tangible, a thick, cold presence that wraps around you. As you walk, your eyes dart nervously towards the shadows that cling to the sides of the cottages, elongated and distorted, seeming to writhe and shift in the profound darkness. You feel an intense, almost primal urge to turn and run, to seek the fragile comfort of your hearth. But a morbid fascination holds you rooted. You see faint flickers of candlelight through the cracks in other villagers, shutters, small, desperate beacons against the overwhelming dark. You imagine them huddled inside, just like you would be, whispering prayers, clutching charms, their faces pale and etched with the same ancient fear that gnaws at your own soul. A movement catches your eye. A figure, swift and silent, darts from one cottage to another, a cloak pulled tightly around them, their head bowed, avoiding all eye contact, their form dissolving quickly into the deeper gloom. They carry something small and dark, an offering perhaps, or a ward, something meant to protect, or perhaps to appease. Their urgency, their furtive movements, speak volumes of the shared belief. Tonight, the veil between worlds thins. Tonight, the spirits of the dead, both good and ill, walk the earth. And tonight, the living are at their most vulnerable. You stand there, a cold dread twisting in your gut, the scent of damp earth and protective herbs filling your lungs. This isn't just a night on the calendar. It's a living entity, a force that demands respect, demands fear. You realize that All Hallows' Eve isn't just about stories or legends. It's about a profound, ancient truth. When the boundaries between this world and the next become terrifyingly porous, leaving humanity exposed to the forgotten faces, the haunted cries, and the night terrors of every Halloween that ever was, a stark reminder of your fragile place between life and the restless dead. The air is electric, humming with a cold, unsettling energy, far beyond the usual winter chill. It's the eve of All Hallows, and you're outside your cottage, trying to make sense of the profound silence that has fallen over the village. The protective herbs hung over doorways give off a faint, bitter scent, mingling with the damp earth and the unsettling sweetness of decay. But now, a new sensation prickles your skin. A cold, internal shiver that has nothing to do with the outside temperature. A feeling like an unseen presence has just walked through you. You stand motionless, straining your ears, but there's no wind, no rustling leaves, no distant hoot of an owl. Just an absolute, suffocating quiet that feels heavier than any sound, pressing down on you from all sides. Your breath catches in your throat, held captive by the profound stillness. It's the kind of silence that feels unnatural, as if the very world has ceased to breathe, waiting for something, anticipating. The hair on your arm stands on end, and a cold dread coils tight in your stomach. A deeper fear than you've ever known. A chilling certainty that the veil has truly thinned. Then, a flicker. At the very edge of your vision, in the deepest part of the shadows cast by the gnarled oak at the village entrance, you catch a fleeting movement. It's too quick to be real, too insubstantial, like smoke shifting in a non-existent breeze. But it's there, a formless shape, a ripple in the fabric of the pervasive darkness, a fleeting, almost transparent figure that seems to shimmer with an internal, ethereal light, then vanishes as quickly as it appears. Your eyes dart to the spot, but there's nothing, only the deep, unwavering black of the night. You blink, then blink again, questioning your own senses, wondering if the cold and the fear are playing tricks on your mind. But then, you hear it, a faint, almost imperceptible whisper, carried on a breath that isn't wind. It's not a clear word, but a drawn-out mournful sigh, an echo of profound sorrow, or perhaps a desperate plea that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere all at once. It's a sound that seems to vibrate in your bones, passing through you, leaving a trail of icy dread in its wake. It's the sound of something ancient, something sorrowful, a voice from beyond the veil. Your heart begins to pound, a frantic drumbeat against your ribs, a desperate struggle against the encroaching terror. You realize that the world has shifted, profoundly and irrevocably. The boundary between the living and the dead, between what is seen and what is only felt, has blurred, perhaps even dissolved entirely. The entire atmosphere is charged with these unseen presences, these lingering echoes of forgotten lives. You feel terribly exposed, vulnerable to a host of unseen eyes, unheard whispers, 1,000 ghosts stirring in the cold, thin air. You want to run, to hide, to scream, but your feet feel rooted to the frozen earth, paralyzed by the sheer weight of their presence. You stand there, lost in the overwhelming presence of the spectral world, understanding that this night is not just about human fear or human cruelty. It's about the raw, undeniable reality of a world far larger, far more mysterious than you could ever comprehend. You realize that on All Hallows' Eve, humanity isn't just celebrating a tradition, it's living a profound, terrifying truth. You are not just observing. You are experiencing the unsettling reality that you are a fragile, fleeting part of a vast, timeless struggle between life and the restless, haunted faces of the forgotten dead, forever trapped in the terrifying, tenuous space where the veil thins between worlds. The air outside your cottage has grown colder, the moonless night still swallowing everything whole. But now it's not just the damp earth or dried herbs that sting your nostrils. There's a new, faint scent, a mix of raw pumpkin rind and crude earthy paints. It's the eve of All Hallows, and the profound silence, usually so unsettling, is now punctuated by strange, muffled shuffles and the soft creak of straw. You venture out, wrapped tight in your worn cloak, but the familiar village seems transformed. Your eyes, straining in the oppressive darkness, begin to discern movement. Figures. Not the furtive villagers of earlier, but something altogether different. They emerge from the shadows between the hovels, from behind the ancient well, from the deep gloom of the forest edge. They move with an unsettling slowness, a deliberate, almost ritualistic pace. Each figure is cloaked, obscuring their forms, but it's their faces that truly seize your breath. They wear masks. Crude, grotesque masks carved from wood or hardened leather. Some painted with jagged, demonic grins, others with hollow, vacant eyes that seem to stare into an abyss. There are animalistic visages, a boar's snouted fury, a wolf's predatory sneer, and other stranger forms that defy recognition, nightmarish amalgamations of human and beast. You freeze, your heart thudding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. The collective presence of these masked figures sends a cold shiver down your spine, a deeper chill than the winter air. They don't speak, don't make any discernible sound beyond the soft scuff of their boots on the frozen earth and the faint rustle of their rough cloaks. Their silence is more menacing than any shout, a heavy, suffocating blanket that presses in on you. You try to discern their intent, to find a familiar gesture, a recognizable human flicker in their movements. But the masks utterly strip them of individuality, leaving only the chilling, inscrutable facade. Are these villagers, you wonder, playing out an ancient custom? Or are they something else entirely? Spirits, or perhaps worse, men emboldened by anonymity to act on darker impulses. One of the figures, taller than the rest, with a mask depicting a skeletal grin, turns its head slowly towards you. You feel its gaze, though its eyes are merely painted holes in the wood, a cold, unwavering stare that seems to pierce directly into your very soul. You instinctively take a step back, a small, involuntary movement that makes the brittle twigs under your feet snap loudly in the stillness. You want to run, to flee back to the fragile safety of your dwelling. But you find yourself rooted, captivated by the disturbing spectacle, by the sheer, unsettling power of their masked presence. Other villagers are also drawn out, standing at their doorways, their faces pale, their eyes wide with the same mixture of fear and fascination that grips you. They pull their children closer, their hands clamping over tiny mouths, stifling any sound. They watch in terrified silence, their gazes fixed on the slowly moving figures, a shared understanding of the delicate balance between mischief and malice that this night embodies. They know, as you do, that the masks can protect them from evil spirits, but they also know that the masks can unleash the evil within men. You stand there, a cold dread twisting in your gut, realizing the profound, terrifying ambiguity of the scene. The masks don't just hide faces, they hide intentions, transforming familiar neighbors into unsettling, unknown entities. Tonight, on the eve of All Hallows, the boundary between the living and the dead, between the human and the monstrous, feels utterly dissolved. And the true terror, you understand, is not just in the spirits that might walk, but in the chilling question of what dark deeds, what malice, might be veiled behind those grotesque, impassive faces. The cold, damp air, already thick with the scent of raw pumpkin and crude paint, now carries a new, unsettling resonance. It's the dull, rhythmic thud of heavy boots on frozen ground, deliberate and slow, growing steadily louder. The masked figures, those unsettling entities clad in dark cloaks, are no longer merely wandering. They are coalescing, moving with a chilling purpose towards the small, rough-hewn shrine at the village's edge, a place usually adorned with simple offerings and whispered prayers. Your breath hitches in your throat. This feels profoundly wrong, a desecration waiting to happen on a night meant to respect the sacred. You are pressed back into the shadows of a nearby hovel, your heart pounding a frantic rhythm against your ribs. The cloaked forms, their grotesque masks catching the barest hint of light from unseen sources, now seem larger, more menacing. You notice a change in their collective posture. The earlier unsettling stillness has given way to a coiled energy, a predatory readiness. One figure, its mask a gaping, toothy maw, carries a rough wooden cudgel, swinging it loosely by its side, the faint thud against its leg a chilling counterpoint to the silence. Their anonymity, the complete erasure of their human faces, seems to embolden them, transforming them from mere villagers into an almost monstrous, singular entity. You glance at the other villagers, still huddled in their doorways or pressed against walls, their faces pale with terror. Their eyes, wide and fearful, track the slow, deliberate procession of the masked figures. No one cries out, no one intervenes. Their silence is heavy with fear, but also with a chilling resignation, a tacit acknowledgement of the unchecked power that anonymity can unleash. You see a woman pull her child's face into her cloak, shielding them from the sight, but her own gaze remains fixed, a morbid, terrified fascination. The air itself feels colder, infused with the bitter taste of fear and the unspoken knowledge that on this night, all bets are off. The masked figures reach the shrine. Without a word, The figure with the skeletal grin raises its arm, pointing a gloved finger at the small, crude wooden cross that stands proudly atop the moss-covered stones. Then, with a sudden sharp movement, the figure with the cudgel steps forward. A loud, splintering crack tears through the quiet night as the heavy wood strikes the cross, once, then again, with brutal, deliberate force. The sound echoes unnervingly in the oppressive silence, a jarring, sickening violation. The cross, a symbol of protection and faith, breaks, falling to the frozen earth with a dull thud, its pieces scattering like shattered bones. A collective, shuddering gasp ripples through the hidden villagers, a sound of shared horror, but still, no one moves. The masked figures stand over the broken cross for a moment, silent, their grotesque faces utterly unreadable. A chilling tableau of desecration. You can feel the wave of malice radiating from them, a dark, palpable presence that now truly fills the night. They don't linger. They turn, slowly, their cloaks swirling around them, and melt back into the deeper, impenetrable shadows. Their footsteps fading, leaving behind only the broken cross and a profound, aching sense of violation. You stand there, trembling, the raw reality of what you've just witnessed settling deep in your gut. This wasn't merely mischief. It was an act of deliberate malice, a profound transgression against faith and community. You realize with a chilling certainty that the masks on this holy night aren't just for hiding faces from spirits. They are a powerful cloak for human sin, a terrifying release for the darkest impulses that lie hidden within seemingly ordinary people. The raw, biting wind whips at your thin clothes as you hurry through the village, the memory of the desecrated shrine still a raw wound in your mind. The pervasive scent of decay, heavy with the aftermath of All Hallows' Eve, seems to cling to everything. Ahead, a gaunt, ragged figure sits slumped against the cold, rough stone of the village well, a familiar sight. It's the old beggar, a silent fixture in your daily life, usually ignored, often shunned. But today, something is different. His usual posture of quiet resignation has been replaced by an unsettling rigidity, a tension that radiates from his huddled form. As you draw closer, the air around him feels colder, infused with a strange, acrid smell. Not the sweet decay of the plague, but something sharper, like stale sweat and dried blood, a metallic tang that pricks your nostrils. His head is bowed, his face obscured by a filthy, matted beard, but you can feel his gaze, an intense, unsettling weight that seems to burn into your very soul, even without meeting your eyes. You notice his hands, gnarled and trembling, clutching a crude wooden staff, its tip worn smooth by years of use. There's a faint, almost imperceptible tremor running through his entire body. Other villagers, moving cautiously through the square, also avoid him. Their movements are quick, their gazes darting away as they pass, a silent agreement to ignore his presence. A woman pulls her hood lower, her pace quickening, as if to ward off an unseen evil. A man spits on the ground as he walks by, a superstitious gesture of disdain and fear. The air between them and the beggar feels charged, a palpable barrier of discomfort and unspoken dread. He is an outcast, a pariah, a living testament to the harsh realities of your world. But today, that distance feels amplified, imbued with a new, unsettling power. Then, he speaks. Not in a plea for alms, not in a mumbled prayer, but in a low, guttural growl that seems to vibrate through the very stones of the well. His voice is hoarse, cracked, yet carries an unexpected, chilling power. rising in intensity with each syllable. You cannot make out the words, not precisely, but the tone itself is unmistakable. Bitter, venomous, overflowing with a raw, festering hatred. It's a cascade of malediction, a torrent of suffering and anger unleashed upon the world, a curse poured out upon all who ignore him, upon all who scorn him, upon the very land itself. His head slowly rises, and his eyes, though clouded with age and suffering, burn with an unnatural, feverish intensity, fixed on something unseen in the distant gray sky. He raises his staff, its gnarled wood trembling, pointing it with a terrible, deliberate slowness at the houses of the village, at the meager crops, at the very ground beneath your feet. His whole body shakes with the effort, radiating a profound, desperate rage. You feel a cold dread twisting in your gut, a prickling certainty that his words, though unheard, carry an ominous weight, a dark promise of retribution. The air around him seems to thicken, heavy with the weight of his curse, a tangible aura of ill will. You stand there, frozen, feeling the raw, ancient power of his words, realizing that this is not just the ramblings of a madman, but the desperate, venomous outpouring of a soul utterly broken by the cruel indifference of the world. His curse isn't just a sound, it's a living entity, an unseen force unleashed upon your village. You understand with a chilling certainty that in this brutal medieval world, even the most downtrodden, the most forgotten, can wield a terrifying power, the power of a curse born of unimaginable suffering that lingers in the air, a dark omen of inescapable doom, waiting to take root and spread its insidious venom. The beggar's hoarse, guttural curse fades into a series of ragged, desperate coughs, his body shaking violently against the cold stone of the well. The raw, acrid smell of stale sweat and profound suffering still hangs heavy in the air around him, a stark contrast to the sharp, clean scent of the biting winter wind. He slumps back, utterly spent, his eyes closing, his staff clattering softly to the frozen earth beside him. The unsettling tension that had momentarily gripped the village square dissipates, replaced by a lingering unease and the familiar, almost habitual indifference of the passing villagers. You continue your wary progression through the square, feeling the cold seep through your worn boots, the lingering dread of the curse a dull ache in your mind. The sun, a pale, weak disk in the gray sky, offers little warmth. As you pass a cluster of children playing a muted game of tag near a stack of firewood, a sudden movement catches your eye. One of the children, a small boy with a perpetually grubby face, breaks from the group. He approaches the slumped beggar, his steps hesitant, his movements slow and deliberate, a stark contrast to the other villagers, hurried avoidance. Your breath catches in your throat. You feel a prickle of alarm, a premonition of danger. The boy carries something small in his hand, something wrapped in a scrap of old cloth. He approaches the beggar carefully, his small face etched with a mixture of childlike curiosity and a shy, hesitant compassion. He extends his hand, holding out the small, meager offering. It's a crust of stale bread, a tiny, insignificant piece of food, yet in this brutal world, it's a gesture of profound kindness, a small, fragile spark of humanity against the overwhelming indifference. The beggar, who had seemed utterly defeated, stirs. His eyes, slowly opening, are cloudy and unfocused, but then they land on the small boy, on the offering of bread. A flicker of something passes through them. Surprise, perhaps, or a fleeting moment of bewildered humanity, before his gaze drops to the crust in the boy's hand. He remains motionless for a moment. Then, with a slow, deliberate movement that seems to require immense effort, His gnarled hand reaches out, trembling, and gently takes the bread from the child's grasp. There is no snatching, no greed, only a profound, almost reverent acceptance. The boy, having completed his task, quickly retreats, rejoining his playmates, his small face now alight with a shy triumph. The beggar watches him go, his eyes lingering on the retreating form of the child, a faint, almost imperceptible tremor running through his body. He raises the bread slowly to his nose, inhaling its stale, earthy scent, then takes a small, tentative bite, his movements slow, deliberate, as if savoring a rare and unexpected treasure. The rough crust crumbles in his mouth, a small, humble sacrament. You watch from your hidden vantage point, a strange mix of emotions swirling within you. Is this simple act of kindness enough to appease the bitter curse? Is it a trick, a treat, or a prelude to something else entirely? You realize, with a chilling clarity, that even in the darkest, most brutal corners of this medieval world, where fear and desperation reign supreme, a single act of compassion, a small gesture of human connection, can cut through the bitterness, offering a fleeting glimpse of hope. But you also know, with a heavy heart, that the weight of his curse, born of years of neglect and suffering, might be too heavy to be easily lifted, and that vengeance, once awakened, might demand a far greater price, a terrifying prelude to a reckoning yet to come. The biting cold of the deep night still permeates every corner of your small village, but now it carries a new, unsettling resonance. The familiar scent of wood smoke and damp earth is abruptly pierced by a sound that slices through the profound silence. A long, mournful howl, drawn out and chilling, not like any wolf you've ever heard. It's too deep, too resonant, echoing across the frozen landscape with an ancient, sorrowful power that seems to vibrate in your very bones. You're huddled inside your cottage, trying to mend a fishing net by the dying embers of the hearth, but your hands still, the coarse twine slipping from your grasp. You sit perfectly still, straining your ears, trying to dismiss it as a trick of the wind or a lonely beast. But then it comes again, closer this time, and unmistakably accompanied by another sound. A guttural, baying cry, followed by another, and another, a frantic chorus of countless hounds, their voices raw and desperate, thrumming with an unearthly hunger. Interspersed among their cries, you hear it, a series of sharp, haunting blasts from a distant horn, its notes wild and untamed, cutting through the night air like a jagged blade. It's a sound that feels older than the trees, older than memory itself, dragging forgotten legends from the depths of your mind. Your breath catches in your throat, held captive by the escalating soundscape. The rough wool of your tunic suddenly feels too thin, offering no protection against the cold dread that washes over you. You feel the tremor in the earth, faint at first, then growing steadily stronger, a rhythmic thudding that vibrates up through the packed earth floor and into your very core. It's the thundering of unseen hooves, a multitude of them, galloping with a furious, relentless speed, a terrifying, unstoppable force hurtling towards your village. The sounds aren't just approaching, they are consuming the night. You glance around your dwelling. The other villagers, previously lost in the fitful sleep of the weary, are also stirring. A child lets out a soft, sharp cry, quickly stifled by a mother's trembling hand. You hear the rustle of straw as forms sit bolt upright, their shared fear, a palpable, heavy presence in the suffocating dark. Their wide, terrified eyes, though unseen in the gloom, you know mirror your own, fixed on the thin, wooden shutters, on the fragile barrier that separates you from the escalating terror outside. No one speaks, no one dares to light a lamp, as if any movement, any flicker of light might draw the attention of the unseen, spectral procession. The sounds are now deafening, an overwhelming symphony of primal fear. The baying of the hounds is a frantic, hungry roar. The horn blasts sharp and commanding. The thunder of hooves a relentless, earth-shaking beat. It feels like the very fabric of the world is tearing apart. That the boundary between this realm and something ancient, terrifying, is dissolving. The air outside your cottage feels charged with a cold, desperate energy, a profound spiritual chill that seems to seep through the walls. You can almost feel the wild wind of their passage, the hungry breath of the chase, sweeping over your fragile home, carrying with it the scent of primal fear and something ancient, utterly unholy. You press your hands over your ears, a futile attempt to block out the overwhelming, terrifying cacophony, but the sounds penetrate, echoing in your skull, a relentless assault on your sanity. The Wild Hunt. It's not just a legend, you realize with a chilling certainty, but a living, breathing nightmare, a primal force that sweeps across the land on nights like these, carrying with it the souls of the damned and claiming the unwary. You understand that some terrors aren't meant to be fought or understood, but simply to be endured, to be survived, as the ancient, unforgiving world unleashes its most terrifying, unstoppable legends upon the living. The overwhelming cacophony of the Wild Hunt finally begins to recede, fading into the deep recesses of the night. The thunder of hooves diminishes to a distant rumble. The baying of hounds softens to a mournful echo, and the wild horn blasts are swallowed by the vast, oppressive silence. You lie there, still huddled in your dwelling, your body trembling, drenched in a cold sweat. The silence that follows is not a comfort, but a heavy, suffocating blanket, laden with the lingering cold dread of what has just swept through your world. You slowly unpeel your hands from your ears, your hearing still ringing with the spectral chase. As the first faint, gray light of dawn begins to streak the sky, painting the small window opening in dull washes of ash, the villagers slowly, cautiously, begin to emerge from their homes. Their movements are stiff, their faces pale and drawn, etched with the same terror that grips your own soul. They blink against the weak light, their eyes darting nervously, searching the frost-nipped ground, scanning the desolate paths. No one speaks, not yet. Only the ragged sound of their collective breathing fills the air, punctuated by the soft shuffle of cautious footsteps. You step out too, the biting cold of the morning air, a sharp shock against your skin, a welcome distraction from the internal chill. But then a murmur begins. It's not loud, but it spreads quickly, like a cold fire among dry tinder. Whispers. You hear it, a faint, almost inaudible question. The beggar. Where is the beggar? Your eyes snap to the village well, the spot where the old man usually huddled, a perpetual fixture against the cold stone. It's empty. His crude wooden staff, his only companion, lies forlornly on the frozen earth, a silent testament to his sudden, inexplicable absence. Your heart clenches. The crust of bread offered by the child is gone, but the man himself, the one who hurled curses at the village, is nowhere to be seen. The murmurs quickly deepen, twisting and evolving. The initial confusion gives way to a chilling, superstitious certainty. The hunt, someone whispers, their voice thin with awe and fear. The Wild Hunt took him. His curses, his dark words, they called to the spirits. Another nods, her eyes wide, pulling her shawl tighter. The spirits claim the cursed, the unholy. They cleanse the land. You see a man from the edge of the crowd, one who had often scorned the beggar, nod with a grim, almost relieved satisfaction. His eyes meet yours for a fleeting moment, a strange mixture of triumph and feigned sorrow in their depths. The communal fear of the wild hunt, the ancient folklore, quickly becomes the convenient explanation, a readily available alibi for a disappearance. No one questions how he vanished so completely, leaving no trace but his staff. No one suggests human hands, driven by fear or resentment, might have played a part under the cloak of supernatural chaos. The narrative of the wild hunt is easier to accept, a way to absolve themselves of responsibility, to rationalize a silence, a cruelty, that feels all too human. It feels like a convenient truth, hiding a darker, more earthly one. You stand there, feeling the biting cold, the fear, and the unsettling comfort folklore provides. You realize how easily stories bend, how readily people cling to the supernatural to explain uncomfortable realities, especially when those realities might point a finger back at themselves. The wild hunt may indeed ride, but you cannot shake the chilling thought. Sometimes, the true predators are not spirits or specters, but men and women using ancient terrors as an alibi for their own, very human, crimes. The beggar's disappearance is now a legend, a grim tale, yet you feel the cold, sharp edge of something far more calculated beneath the surface. The air in the small dwelling, usually thick with the faint sweetness of milk and warm swaddling, now carries an unsettling, almost metallic scent, a dryness that prickles your nostrils. You're trying to ignore the constant drone of fear that permeates your days, but then, a sound cuts through the familiar quiet. From the crude wooden cradle in the corner, a baby stirs, not with a typical healthy wail, but with a low, rasping cough, a dry, unnatural sound that catches in your throat, making the hair on your arms stand on end. You turn, your gaze drawn to the simple cradle. The baby lies there, swaddled tightly, but its movements are not the soft, restless flailings of an infant. Instead, it seems to writhe subtly, almost stiffly, beneath the rough blankets. Its eyes, open now, are too dark, too deep for a newborn, holding an unsettling ancient wisdom that seems to pierce through the dim light of the dwelling. They don't blink with the slow, uncertain rhythm of a baby, but stare with an unnerving, unblinking intensity that makes your own skin crawl. The child's face, usually round and soft, seems drawn, almost gaunt, its skin a sickly pale gray, contrasting sharply with the healthy flush of its mother's cheek. The mother, a young woman whose face is etched with exhaustion and a profound, private despair, hovers over the cradle. Her hand, trembling, reaches out to touch the baby's forehead, but she hesitates, her fingers hovering just inches away, as if recoiling from an unseen heat or cold. Her gaze, usually full of maternal tenderness, is now a mixture of profound sorrow and a chilling, almost desperate denial. She tries to hum a lullaby, but her voice is thin, reedy, breaking on the notes, and her eyes dart nervously to the other villagers in the room, then quickly back to the unsettling infant. Her fear is a palpable presence, thicker than the wood smoke. You watch as the baby's lips, thin and dry, curl into something that is not a smile, but a grimace, a silent, ancient mockery. Another rasping cough tears from its tiny throat, a sound that grates on your nerves, entirely devoid of the vulnerable helplessness of a normal child's cry. You feel a cold dread twisting in your gut, a primal revulsion that struggles against your ingrained sense of compassion. The air around the cradle feels heavy, charged with an unspoken question. a terrifying possibility that has been whispered in hushed tones around the dying embers of countless hearths. Other villagers in the shared dwelling pretend not to notice, their heads bowed over their meager tasks, their movements stiff and unnatural. But you feel their collective awareness, their unspoken fear. Their gazes, quick and furtive, flick to the cradle, then dart away, settling on nothing in particular, as if looking too long might draw the attention of the unsettling thing in the corner. Their silence is a testament to their terror, a shared understanding that this is not their child, that something alien and malevolent has replaced the innocent life that should have been there. You stand there, a knot of icy horror tightening in your chest. This isn't just a sick baby, it's a terrifying fulfillment of old wives' tales, a dark legend made flesh. You realize, with a chilling clarity, that the true horror here isn't just the sight of the unnatural infant, but the profound, agonizing dilemma of the parents, forced to nurture something alien in their arms, knowing it is not their own, yet unable to cast it out. It's a cruel, intimate terror, the ultimate violation of the sanctity of home, leaving you with the chilling question, how do you live, day after agonizing day, with a monster in your cradle, a phantom child that mocks the very essence of life and family? The chilling rasp of the changeling's cough still echoes in the cold air of the dwelling, cutting through the usual sounds of a medieval home. The baby's unnerving, unblinking stare feels like a physical weight, pressing down on everyone present. The air, heavy with the stench of sickness and fear, now carries a new, sharper tang, the acrid smell of desperation, bordering on hysteria. You're trying to avert your gaze, but a terrible fascination holds you captive, unable to look away from the unsettling infant. The mother, whose face has grown paler, now holds the baby not with tenderness, but with a stiff, almost rigid apprehension. Her eyes dart from the child to her husband, who stands nearby, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of profound helplessness and despair. He avoids her gaze, and the baby's, his own eyes fixed on the worn straw beneath his feet. The unspoken question hangs between them, a terrifying weight. What do you do with a changeling, a demon in your cradle, a child stolen by malevolent fae? The fear of the village, the whispers of ancient lore, have slowly poisoned their love, replacing it with a creeping dread. Then, a low murmur begins to rise from the other villagers in the communal space. It starts as a barely audible hum, but quickly grows in intensity, a collective drone of agreement and accusation. You catch fragments of words, hissed in hushed tones: fire, old rites, return it to the Fae. Their faces, previously etched with fear, now contort with a grim resolve, a terrible certainty that feels utterly unyielding. They are no longer simply witnessing, they are collectively deciding, driven by desperation, by ancient superstition, and by the relentless pressure of a life-threatening invisible plague that needs a scapegoat, a demon to banish. The mother's head snaps up, her eyes wide with a sudden dawning horror. She looks at the villagers, at their hardened faces, their determined nods, and a raw, guttural cry of protest escapes her throat. She clutches the changeling tighter, instinctively, protectively. Despite her own terror, her maternal instincts warring with the crushing weight of their collective judgment. Her husband, finally raising his head, meets her frantic gaze, and in his eyes you see not defiance, but a terrible, resigned acceptance, a broken man giving in to the overwhelming force of communal superstition, a decision made for survival over love. You feel a wave of icy revulsion wash over you, a profound sense of wrongness that chills you to the very core. This isn't just a brutal act. It's the ultimate betrayal, a sacrifice born of terror, a desperate attempt to appease unseen forces and halt the relentless march of death. You watch as a burly man, his face grim, steps forward, his hand reaching out, not gently, towards the mother, towards the swaddled infant. Her cry intensifies, a raw, piercing sound of agony and despair, as she struggles against him, her frail strength no match for his grim determination, or for the collective will of the terrified villagers. You stand there, a helpless, horrified witness to the unthinkable. You realize, with a chilling clarity, that the true horror isn't just the monster in the cradle, but the monstrous acts that fear and superstition can drive ordinary people to commit. In this brutal medieval world, folklore is not just a story. It's a terrifying justification, a twisted logic that can turn parents against their own child, and a community against its most vulnerable members. And the chilling sound of that mother's scream as her child is taken will forever echo in your mind, a haunting testament to the tragic price of human fear and the profound, unforgiving cruelty that can be veiled in the name of ancient rites and desperate survival. The biting cold of the pre-dawn still seeps into your bones, even within the flimsy walls of your dwelling. The air carries the lingering scent of damp straw and stale wood smoke, heavy with the quiet despair that has settled over your village. You're just starting to stir from a fitful sleep when it begins. Not a single sound, but a sudden, overwhelming explosion of noise that rips through the fragile quiet of the morning. A piercing, raw scream, sharp with terror, tears through the air, followed instantly by another, then a cacophony of shouts, guttural cries, and the frantic pounding of running feet. You shoot upright, your heart leaping into your throat, a cold shock of adrenaline surging through your veins. The floorboards beneath you vibrate with the sudden commotion. Other villagers in the room are scrambling, groaning, their fear a palpable presence in the suffocating dark. You hear the sharp creak of a door being thrown open, followed by the clatter of a hastily dropped wooden bucket, and then more desperate shouts, closer now, echoing from just outside your cottage. It's not just a cry of alarm, it's a full-blown hue and cry, the frantic, unified call to action that means something terrible, something urgent, is unfolding. You stumble out of your dwelling, pulling your rough cloak tighter into the chaos. The dim gray light of dawn offers little clarity, only enough to reveal the frantic, swirling mass of your neighbors. They are running, not in a coherent direction but frantically, some towards the source of the screams, others away, their faces pale and contorted with a mixture of terror and grim determination. You see a woman, her hair wild, clutching a child to her chest, her eyes wide with unbridled panic as she points a trembling finger towards the edge of the village, towards the forest where the wild hunt supposedly rode. A man, his face grim, brandishes a rough, dull axe, his movements clumsy, born more of fear than skill. The air is thick with the scent of fear, of sweat, of damp earth churned by countless running feet. Your own breath comes in ragged gasps, burning in your throat. You feel yourself caught in the surge of bodies, jostled and pushed, trying to discern the true source of the terror, trying to understand what has shattered the last vestiges of the night's tenuous peace. The sounds are deafening now, the frantic baying of a village dog, the sharp crack of breaking branches from the forest edge, the desperate, unified shouts of men calling out, "Raid! Raiders! To arms!" Or is it, witchcraft? The words are indistinguishable, swallowed by the sheer, overwhelming din. You turn your head frantically, trying to catch a glimpse, a single, clear image amidst the swirling confusion, but all you see are desperate, terrified faces, distorted by the weak light and the raw emotion. The very ground beneath your worn boots seems to vibrate with the collective panic, a profound, unsettling tremor that rattles your bones. The communal fear is a living, breathing entity, a monstrous thing born from the desperation of your village, dictating every frantic movement, every choked cry. It's an unstoppable force, sweeping through the narrow paths, consuming everything in its path. You stand there, a helpless witness, overwhelmed by the raw, untamed chaos, realizing that the hue and cry isn't just a legal command. It's a primal, visceral surge of communal fear, a terrifying, unthinking beast that can swallow all reason and incite acts of both courage and unspeakable cruelty. You understand, with a chilling clarity, that on a night like this, when terror consumes a village, the lines between defending, hunting, and simply succumbing to the raw, ancient fear of the unknown become hopelessly blurred, leaving everyone vulnerable to the terrifying, unpredictable storm of collective panic. The cacophony of the hue and cries still echoes through the narrow lanes of your village, a deafening symphony of fear and desperation. You're caught in the surging tide of villagers, pushed and pulled by the frantic momentum, the scent of panic thick in the cold morning air. Your eyes dart wildly, trying to find a focal point amidst the chaos, to grasp the reason for this sudden, terrifying outburst. Your heart pounds a frantic rhythm against your ribs, a desperate drumbeat against the overwhelming din. Then, through a momentary parting in the frantic crowd, you see it. Your gaze locks onto a small, hunched figure, struggling, being dragged towards the center of the village square, towards the remnants of last night's bonfire. It's the old woman, the one branded by iron, her frail body twisting and turning, her arms flailing weakly against the firm grip of several burly men. Her face, tear-streaked and contorted in a silent scream of pure terror, is a vision of utter despair. Her thin, gray hair, wild and disheveled, trails behind her as they pull her along the frozen earth, her worn tunic tearing, offering no resistance. A fresh wave of shock and icy dread washes over you, momentarily paralyzing your limbs. The hue and cry, you realize with a chilling clarity, was not just about an unknown threat, it was about her. The panic, the anger, the raw fear, it had all coalesced, found its target, and now its momentum is terrifyingly unstoppable. The crowd around you, their faces no longer just frantic but now grim, determined, even vengeful, surges forward, their collective fury a monstrous, living entity. They surround the struggling woman, pressing in, their shouts now coalescing into a single terrifying roar. Witch! Burn her! The devil's familiar! You hear the sharp crack of a thrown stone, hitting the old woman with a sickening thud. She lets out a choked cry, her body twitching, but the men dragging her do not falter. More objects fly from the crowd. Clumps of frozen mud, pieces of wood, anything that comes to hand, each one accompanied by a guttural shout of condemnation. The sheer force of their collective rage is overwhelming, a physical weight that presses down on you, making your stomach churn with bitter bile. You want to scream, to intervene, but your voice is frozen in your throat, and your body feels utterly powerless against the sheer, overwhelming momentum of the mob. The men reach the cold, dark remains of the bonfire. Without ceremony, without a moment of hesitation, they roughly push the old woman towards it. She stumbles, falls, and they force her to her knees, her frail body shaking violently, her eyes wide with a profound, desolate terror as she gazes at the charred wood. Her shallow, ragged breaths are the only sound she makes now, a desperate, silent plea, against the overwhelming, brutal judgment of the crowd. The village elder stands at the edge of the circle, his face grim, his gaze unwavering, a silent nod of approval in his eyes. You stand there, a helpless, horrified witness to the swift, brutal judgment of the crowd. This isn't justice. It's raw, unthinking retribution, fueled by generations of fear, superstition, and the desperate need to find a scapegoat for an unseen plague. You realize, with a chilling certainty, that in this brutal medieval world, on a morning following the terrors of All Hallows' Eve, a neighbor's fear, once unleashed, can become a monstrous, unforgiving force, transforming a desperate community into a terrifying, murderous mob. And the image of that old woman, condemned and brutalized, will forever haunt your memory, a stark, horrifying testament to the darkest depths of human fear and cruelty. The morning air, though still biting cold, carries a new metallic tang, sharp and acrid, like rusted iron and stale blood, cutting through the persistent, sickly sweet scent of decay. You're moving slowly through the village square, trying to avoid the lingering fear that still hangs heavy in the atmosphere, a palpable ghost of yesterday's brutal justice. Your eyes instinctively track towards the chapel, its rough-hewn timbers dark and ominous against the pale sky. Today, however, its usual quiet sanctity is shattered by a sound that makes your stomach clench. A dull, rhythmic clanking, heavy and resonant, that echoes strangely from within its hallowed walls. You hesitate, your heart beginning to thump, a slow, heavy rhythm against your ribs, a familiar dread coiling tight in your gut. This sound isn't the gentle chime of a bell or the soft rustle of prayer. It's the unmistakable, chilling sound of heavy metal on stone, of a sustained, purposeful clanging that speaks of restraint, of imprisonment. You draw closer, cautiously, your worn boots crunching softly on the frozen ground. The entrance to the chapel, usually open for all, is now blocked by two grim-faced men, their postures rigid, their crude spears held upright. A silent, unmistakable barrier. Their gazes are hard, warning you back, confirming that something terrible and hidden lies within. But the sound continues. A relentless, heavy clanking, punctuated by the soft, ragged gasps of someone struggling, someone in pain. You hear a faint moan, then another, quickly stifled, as if the sound itself is being forced back down, swallowed by a desperate effort of will. It's a sound that speaks of profound suffering, of an agonizing, slow endurance. You press your ear against the cold, rough timber of the chapel wall, hoping to discern more, hoping to understand. The wood is cold and hard against your cheek, vibrating faintly with the unseen struggle inside. The smell of stale incense, usually comforting, now mixes strangely with the metallic tang, creating an unsettling, almost suffocating atmosphere. Through a small crack in the aged wood, you manage to steal a glimpse. The interior of the chapel is dark, save for a single, flickering torch, casting dancing, grotesque shadows against the rough stone walls. In the center, on the cold, unforgiving floor, a figure lies huddled. It's the old woman, her frail body now cruelly bound. Heavy iron chains, thick and rusted, are wrapped tightly around her wrists and ankles, securing her to the solid, ancient pillar that supports the chapel's roof. Her body is bruised and bloodied, her clothes torn, and her face, already a mask of despair, is now swollen and discolored, etched with a raw, agonizing pain that makes your own breath catch. You watch, horrified, as she tries to shift, to alleviate the crushing pressure of the cold iron, and the chains respond with a harsh, grating clank, a brutal symphony of her imprisonment. Her eyes are open, but unfocused, staring at nothing, deep pools of bewildered suffering. Her shallow, ragged breaths are punctuated by soft, almost imperceptible whimpers, quickly swallowed by the cavernous silence of the chapel. The entire scene is a brutal testament to the swift, unforgiving justice of your medieval world, a justice that knows no mercy, no compassion, only the cold, hard weight of condemnation. You stand there, a helpless, horrified witness, feeling the profound, crushing weight of those chains. This isn't just about punishment. It's about a relentless, agonizing suffering, a deliberate breaking of spirit. You realize with a chilling clarity that the true horror lies not just in the visible brutality, but in the slow, relentless erosion of a human soul, imprisoned and utterly alone, bearing the intolerable burden of collective fear and a community's terrifying, unforgiving wrath. The harsh metallic tang of the chains, the acrid scent of fear, and the raw smell of burnt flesh from yesterday's ordeal still linger, ghosts in your mind. But now, as the heavy wooden door of the chapel slams shut with a resounding thud, cutting off the dim light and the murmurs of the outside world, a new sensation envelops you, a profound, suffocating darkness, and a damp, earthy cold that feels ancient, stagnant, seeping into your very bones. You are not just a witness anymore. You are confined within this space, experiencing the old woman's grim reality, the chapel now transformed into a cruel jail. Your eyes, already accustomed to perpetual dimness, strain against the absolute black. The air is thick and heavy, smelling of damp stone, stale incense, and something else. A faint, almost imperceptible whiff of human waste, a chilling testament to the degradation of imprisonment. The rhythmic clanking of the chains, which had resonated with her struggle, now falls silent, replaced by an unnerving stillness. You hear only your own ragged breath, a frantic pulse thudding in your ears, and the shallow, painful gasps of the old woman, a desperate, fragile sound in the suffocating quiet. You can't see her in the profound darkness, but you feel her presence, huddled in the center of the chapel, bound to the pillar. The image of her bruised and broken form is burned into your mind's eye. You imagine her eyes, wide and unfocused, now staring into an impenetrable void, her mind grappling with the horrifying certainty of her fate. The cold radiating from the stone floor beneath your worn boots feels absolute, seeping upwards, a constant, physical reminder of the unyielding nature of this confinement, of the bleak, inescapable reality of her situation. Time itself seems to stretch, warp, becoming an agonizing crawl. You wait. You listen. Minutes bleed into hours, each passing moment punctuated only by the drip, drip, drip of water from a hidden crevice in the stone ceiling, landing with a soft, hollow plunk somewhere in the darkness. It's a relentless, maddening rhythm, marking the slow, inexorable march towards an inevitable end. The outside world, with its frantic shouts and desperate fears, feels impossibly far away, a distant memory, replaced by this suffocating, isolated void. A deep shiver runs through your body, a mix of cold and profound despair. This is not just a prison, it's a waiting room for death, a cold, dark antechamber where the only certainty is the approaching end. You feel the raw edge of her despair, the psychological torment of absolute isolation, of knowing your fate is sealed and all that remains is the agonizing wait. The silence, broken only by the drip of water and her shallow breaths, becomes a monster in itself, amplifying every fear, every regret, every lost hope. You realize with a chilling clarity that the true cruelty of this medieval justice isn't just the pain of the iron or the fury of the mob, but this profound, soul-crushing waiting. It's the stripping away of dignity, the slow erosion of spirit, leaving only a hollow shell to face the inevitable. The jail in its cold, dark embrace offers no reprieve, only an agonizing, drawn-out prelude to the final, terrifying moment. A stark testament to the unforgiving nature of a world where life can be claimed, not in a swift blow, but in a prolonged, solitary torment. The cold, damp air in the village square is now tinged with the unmistakable scent of stale beer and trampled earth, mixed with the ever-present, sickly sweet aroma of decay that seems to cling to your village. You're jostled by the pressing crowd, their bodies exhaling nervous energy, their faces grim and expectant. The murmurs are low, a restless hum of anticipation that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. All eyes, your own included, are fixed on the grim centerpiece of the square, the gallows, a stark, skeletal structure against the bruised gray sky. Today, it is not empty. The old woman stands beneath it, her frail body slumped, her hands bound tightly before her. Her head is bowed, her thin gray hair obscuring her face, but you can see the tremble in her shoulders, the profound, desolate despair radiating from her very being. The rough ropes that bind her wrists look impossibly thick, stark against her pale, bruised skin. Her worn tunic, torn and muddied, offers little protection from the biting wind or the hostile gazes of the crowd. She makes no sound, no protest, just stands in a quiet, awful resignation, a fragile figure waiting for the inevitable. Beside her, a burly man, dressed in rough, dark leather, stands with a chilling nonchalance. He is the hangman, his face hard and impassive, his movements practiced and deliberate. He holds a long, thick rope, inspecting it with a detached professionalism that sends a cold shiver down your spine. He tests the knot, runs his fingers along the coarse fibers, then glances up at the crossbeam of the gallows, his gaze sharp and assessing. His presence alone radiates a brutal, undeniable authority, the cold, efficient hand of medieval justice. The crowd around you is thick, a sea of silent, watching faces. Some are grim-faced, their expressions unreadable, perhaps hardened by the relentless suffering of your age. Others hold a morbid fascination, their eyes wide, unable to tear away from the spectacle. You see a child, held aloft on his father's shoulders, staring with wide, uncomprehending eyes at the scene, a fragile innocence witnessing a brutal horror. You feel the collective intake of breath, a sharp, ragged sound, as the hangman takes a slow, deliberate step towards the old woman, the rope held loosely in his hand. The air thickens, charged with an almost unbearable tension. The only sounds are the restless shuffling of feet, the distant caw of a crow, and the insistent thudding of your own frantic heart against your ribs. You can almost feel the old woman's fear, a palpable wave of absolute terror emanating from her slumped form, mixing with the collective anticipation of the crowd. It's a chilling atmosphere, a profound stillness before the storm, a moment stretched taut with impending doom. You stand there, a helpless witness to this grim spectacle, realizing the terrifying, public face of medieval justice. This isn't just a punishment, it's a performance. A brutal lesson delivered under the unforgiving gaze of the entire community. You understand, with a chilling clarity, that the hangman's spectacle isn't just about ending a life. It's about asserting power, instilling fear, and offering a grim, public appeasement to the unseen forces that plague your world. And the lingering image of that frail, doomed figure, poised on the brink of oblivion, will forever haunt your memory. A stark, horrifying reminder of the relentless cruelty that can be wrought in the name of order and the enduring terror of forgotten Halloweens. The heavy, chilling silence of the village square is shattered. The burly hangman, his movements precise and cold, secures the thick rope around the old woman's neck. You watch, transfixed, as the coarse fibers chafe against her bruised skin, stark against her pale, exposed throat. Her head, previously bowed in despair, now jerks back, her eyes wide, unfocused pools of pure, unadulterated terror, staring at nothing but the unforgiving sky. Her lips part, a faint, almost inaudible whimper escaping, a final desperate plea swallowed by the suffocating anticipation of the crowd. Then, with a sudden, sickening lurch, the ground beneath her feet gives way. The gallows creaks, a groan of tortured wood as her body drops. A collective, strangled gasp erupts from the tightly packed villagers, a sharp, ragged sound that cuts through the frigid air. Her frail form spasms violently, twisting and jerking at the end of the rope, a brutal dance of death. You hear it, a faint, horrifying gurgle, a choked, final sound that tears from her throat, quickly stifled, as life is brutally, irrevocably extinguished. Her struggle is brief, agonizing, then her body hangs limp, swaying ever so slightly in the biting wind, a grotesque puppet against the bruised gray sky. A profound, heavy silence descends once more, but this time it is different. It's a silence pregnant with the stark reality of death, a chilling testament to the finality of the act. The crowd, previously restless and murmuring, now stands utterly still, their faces pale, their eyes wide and fixed on the dangling form. You see a young woman cover her mouth, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. A grizzled man, who had clamored for her death moments before, now looks away, his face etched with a sudden, uncomfortable horror, a flicker of remorse or perhaps just shock. The initial collective fury has drained away, replaced by a grim, shared recognition of the awful price of their fear. The hangman, utterly unmoved, steps forward, his gaze fixed on the lifeless body. He makes a small, professional adjustment to the rope, his movements devoid of emotion, a cold, efficient servant of death. The village elder stands nearby, his face grim, his eyes sweeping over the quieted crowd, a silent warning in his gaze, a reinforcement of the brutal lesson just delivered. The crows begin to gather overhead, their raucous caws a harsh, unsettling accompaniment to the grim spectacle, a fitting lament for the departed soul. You stand there, feeling utterly hollowed out, the stench of blood and fear a bitter taste in your mouth. This isn't just an execution. It's a terrifying festival of human fear, a brutal public declaration meant to cleanse, to warn, to restore a twisted sense of order to a chaotic world. You realize, with a chilling clarity, that the true horror is not just the act itself, but the chilling transformation of a community, driven by desperation and superstition, to perform such a monstrous deed, finding a desperate, transient peace in the brutal sacrifice of one of their own, and the image of that swaying, lifeless form forever etched against the pale, medieval sky will haunt you, a stark, unforgiving reminder of the fragility of life, the unforgiving nature of collective fear, and the enduring, terrifying power of a warning delivered at the end of a hangman's rope. The air is thick, not just with the biting cold, but with an acrid, choking pall of smoke that burns your eyes and rasps in your throat. It's an unnatural smoke, tinged with the sickening sweet odor of decay and something else. A foul, almost chemical stench, like smoldering sinews and resin. You're pushed and jostled by the tight-packed crowd, their faces grim and resolute, their eyes reflecting the flickering, dancing light that dominates the village square. The constant murmuring of their voices, a low, guttural hum, is punctuated by the furious crackle and roar of a massive fire, a hungry, living entity that draws all attention, all fear. In the center of the square, where the gallows usually stands, now rises a towering pyre, built high with dry wood and bundles of straw. Flames leap and coil towards the bruised, gray sky, sending showers of sparks into the biting wind. Strapped tightly to a thick, rough-hewn stake in the heart of the inferno is a figure. It's the young man, the baker's son. His face, usually flushed with youthful vigor, now pale and contorted in a silent scream of agony and terror. His body, writhing against the thick ropes, is already obscured by the smoke and licking flames, his thin tunic smoldering, the air around him shimmering with unbearable heat. You feel the intense heat radiating outwards, a scorching wave that prickles your skin and makes your eyes water. The roaring of the fire is deafening, an overwhelming symphony of destruction that drowns out all other sounds, save for the frantic pounding of your own heart against your ribs. You can almost feel the young man's pain, the searing agony of the flames, a brutal assault on your own senses. A collective gasp, then a low, mournful moan, ripples through the tightly packed crowd, a shared visceral reaction to the horrifying spectacle. Some turn away, their faces pale, unable to bear the sight, while others stare, transfixed by a morbid fascination, their eyes reflecting the dancing light of the inferno. The village elder stands at the edge of the pyre, his face grim and unyielding, his voice booming a steady, monotonous pronouncement that is lost to the roar of the flames. You can only make out his authoritative gestures, his hands sweeping over the crowd, then pointing at the burning figure, a clear act of condemnation, an invocation of divine judgment and purification. He believes this fire will cleanse the village of its unseen evils, will purge the heresy that has poisoned their community. The air around him feels charged with his righteous fury. A chilling conviction that this brutal act is necessary, is holy. The stench intensifies, sickeningly sweet, as the fire consumes its victim. You watch, horrified, as the young man's struggles grow weaker, his body slowly succumbing to the relentless devouring flames. The smoke thickens, swirling upwards, carrying with it the undeniable, awful odor of burning human flesh, a smell that will forever be etched into your memory, into the very soul of your village. The light from the pyre illuminates the faces of the villagers, their features distorted by the flickering glow, some grim, some horrified, some with a terrible, unholy satisfaction. You stand there, a helpless, horrified witness to this ultimate act of medieval justice, realizing the terrifying power of fear and religious fervor. This isn't just a death. It's a terrifying, brutal purification, a desperate attempt to cleanse a community ravaged by plague and superstition, by burning away what they perceive as heresy. And the image of that young man, consumed by the heretic's fire, will forever haunt your memory, a stark, unforgiving reminder of the darkest depths of human cruelty, and the profound, terrifying power of collective fear unleashed, leaving a permanent, scorching scar on the heart of your forgotten Halloween. The searing heat from the pyre begins to wane, but a new, suffocating warmth lingers in the air, thick with the acrid smell of ash and something far more grim, a lingering sweetness of burnt flesh that clings to your throat. You're no longer pushed and jostled by the frantic, righteous crowd. They now stand in a somber, almost reverent hush around the still smoldering remnants of the pyre, their faces illuminated by the dying embers, etched with a mixture of grim satisfaction and a profound, exhausted relief. The furious crackle and roar of the flames has faded, replaced by the soft, mournful hiss of cooling embers and the mournful whine of the biting wind sifting through the charred wood. Your eyes, Still smarting from the smoke and the raw memory of the young man's agonizing struggle, scan the faces around you. Many are streaked with soot and tears, yet hold an undeniable flicker of conviction, a belief that a great, terrible deed has been accomplished. You see hands pressed together in fervent prayer, lips moving in silent supplication, as if by this act they have somehow absolved their sins, cleansed the village of its unseen malevolence. The village elder stands at the edge of the cooling pyre, his head bowed, his voice now a low, resonant chant, reciting ancient blessings over the ashes, a solemn pronouncement of spiritual triumph over what they perceive as a dark, insidious evil. The air, despite the chill, feels lighter to some, purified by the fire. You hear faint murmurs of God's will, saved his soul from damnation, whispers carried on the wind, a desperate attempt to justify the brutal spectacle you just witnessed. They believe that by burning the body they have freed the soul from the grip of heresy, preventing the contagion of questionable sin from spreading further into their already suffering community. They grasp onto this terrible logic, this brutal form of salvation, as a drowning man grasps at a straw, a desperate act of faith in a world utterly devoid of certainty. The raw smell of the char is a testament to this, a sacrifice they believe was necessary. You feel a profound sense of emptiness, a cold, heavy ache in your stomach that has nothing to do with hunger. The stench of burnt offerings, now mixed with the pervasive scent of underlying decay from the plague, creates a sickening, almost unbearable atmosphere. You look at the dark, smoking heart of the pyre, at the barely discernible remnants of a life brutally extinguished, and you cannot reconcile it with any notion of salvation or divine mercy. It feels instead like an act of profound, agonizing desperation, a cruel and unforgiving display of human fear, cloaked in the guise of righteous purification. You stand there, a silent, unwilling witness to the aftermath, realizing the terrifying, self-deceiving power of collective belief. This isn't just about a body burning. It's about a community grappling with its own mortality, its own terror, finding solace in a brutal, unquestioning act of faith, even when that faith demands the ultimate sacrifice of a human life for a sin that feels all too human in its ambiguity. And the lingering stench of that pyre, the image of those desperate, relieved faces will forever haunt you, a stark, unforgiving reminder of the agonizing price of salvation, and the brutal, chilling reality that sometimes, in the darkest corners of forgotten Halloweens, the very act of saving a soul can become the most monstrous crime of all. The cold, damp air, usually heavy with the scent of wood smoke and decay, now carries a sharper, sweeter tang. The raw, earthy aroma of freshly carved pumpkin, mingled with the faint, warm smell of burning tallow. You're making your way through the deserted village paths, your worn boots crunching softly on the frozen ground, drawn by a series of flickering, uncertain lights. Tonight, All Hallows' Day has dawned, but the terror of the previous night, of the hangman and the pyre, still clings to the very stones of your village. As you draw closer to the cluster of cottages near the well, you see them. Perched on doorsteps, on low stone walls, even suspended precariously from tree branches, are crude hollowed-out gourds and pumpkins. Each one is a grotesque makeshift face. Jagged, triangular eyes stare out from some, their empty sockets filled with the flickering glow of a single, sputtering candle. Others have wide, toothy grins, carved with desperate haste, revealing the soft, fibrous interior. The light from within pulses weakly, casting dancing, distorted shadows against the rough walls of the dwellings, making the familiar shapes seem to writhe and shift. You feel a strange mix of morbid fascination and unsettling dread. Your breath catches in your throat, a small puff of mist in the frigid air. The faces are meant to ward off evil spirits, you know this. But in the dim pre-dawn light, they look more like the tormented faces of the dead themselves, or perhaps the hungry visages of the demons they're meant to repel. Their flickering light, usually a symbol of hope, now feels like a desperate, fragile beacon against an overwhelming darkness, a testament to the village's profound, ongoing fear. You stop before one such carved pumpkin, larger than the rest, perched on the edge of the well. Its eyes are hollow circles, staring blankly, and its mouth is a simple O-shaped hole, as if perpetually gasping in silent horror. The flickering tallow within casts a faint, sickly yellow glow, illuminating a cluster of dried, brittle leaves clinging to its rough skin. You reach out a tentative hand, your fingers brushing against the cold, waxy rind, feeling the faint vibrations of the tiny flame inside. It's both a comfort and a chilling reminder, a physical manifestation of the village's collective attempt to grapple with the unseen. Other villagers emerge from their homes, their faces pale, their eyes wide and bloodshot from sleepless nights. They move slowly, silently, lighting fresh candles in the pumpkins that have gone dark, or adjusting the wicks. They don't speak, their shared task a silent, grim ritual of defense. Their gazes, furtive and haunted, flick from the pumpkins to the shadows, as if expecting the evil spirits, or perhaps the masked figures of last night, to materialize from the gloom at any moment. The air hums with their unspoken anxiety, their desperate hope that these crude, glowing guardians will somehow hold back the encroaching night terrors. You stand there, feeling the profound weight of this desperate tradition. The carved pumpkin, a simple thing of earth and fire, embodies the entire village's struggle. It's a symbol of both their enduring terror of the unknown and their fragile, almost defiant hope for protection. You realize with a chilling clarity that these aren't just decorations. They are the haunted faces of forgotten Halloweens, echoing the past, carrying the fears of the present, and staring, hollow-eyed, into an uncertain, terrifying future, a fragile shield against a world that has become a constant source of nightmares. The cold, sharp tang of freshly carved pumpkin still clings to the air, mingling with the bitter wood smoke and the persistent, sickly sweet scent of decay from the plague. It's All Hallows Day in the village, though quieter after the terrors of the night and the brutal spectacles of yesterday, still hums with an undercurrent of unease. You're standing near the communal well, observing the crude, flickering pumpkin lanterns that dot the pathways, their grotesque faces staring out, perpetual guardians against the unseen. But now, as the weak, pale sun begins its slow ascent, a different kind of movement catches your eye. Children, small bundled figures, usually kept close to their mothers on this day of somber remembrance, are now venturing out. Not with the frantic energy of play, but with a cautious, almost reverent curiosity. They approach the carved pumpkins, their small hands clad in rough mittens, their movements hesitant. One child, no older than 5, kneels before a gourd with jagged, triangular eyes. He doesn't touch it, but leans in close, his breath puffing small clouds into the frigid air, peering intensely into its flickering, tallow-lit interior. His small fingers, surprisingly steady, trace the rough outline of a carved tooth. He murmurs something soft, almost like a secret whispered to the hollow face, then quickly withdraws, a faint, almost imperceptible smile playing on his lips. It's not a smile of glee, but one of quiet wonder, a fragile connection formed with the object of fear. Another child, a little girl, hesitantly offers a tiny dried berry to a pumpkin with a wide, gaping mouth, placing it carefully on its edge, as if feeding a hungry, but now harmless, spirit. There's a solemnity to her act, a nascent ritual, transforming the fearsome into something approachable, something that can be appeased or even befriended. You watch these interactions, a strange mix of emotions swirling within you. The adults in the village still move with a weary caution, their gazes haunted, their fear of the carved faces unwavering, recognizing them as grim talismans against true horror. They light the candles with trembling hands, their faces etched with dread. But the children, unburdened by the same depth of experience or the brutal logic of their elders, seem to find a different kind of engagement. For them, the grotesque grins and hollow eyes are not solely terrifying. They are curious, mysterious, perhaps even controllable, things that can be spoken to, given offerings, made a part of their own small emerging world. A quiet murmur, almost like a suppressed giggle, escapes from a cluster of children huddled around another lantern. They point at the flickering flame, their small faces momentarily alight, not with fear, but with a nascent wonder, a spark of burgeoning delight. It's a delicate, fragile thing, this shift in perception, almost lost in the overwhelming grimness of your medieval world. But it's there, the cold, waxy rind, designed to ward off malevolent spirits, is instead becoming a canvas for their evolving understanding of the unknown. You stand there, feeling a profound, almost poignant revelation. You realize how the ancient, raw terror, the very essence of All Hallows' Eve, is beginning to subtly, imperceptibly transform. For the adults, these carved faces are grim shields against a horrifying reality. But for the children, they are becoming something else, a bridge perhaps between the terrifying unknown and the burgeoning world of imagination, a way to make the darkness less absolute, the monsters less abstract. It's a chilling, yet beautiful, testament to the enduring human spirit, and how even the most ancient, primal fears can, over generations, evolve into something strangely captivating, a mysterious, sometimes even delightful, part of the human experience, a fragile, enduring light in the haunting faces of forgotten Halloweens.